Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 on Wattpad. Now let's start. Chapter 1. The red dragons roar. The rain fell in thick, cold sheets, blurring the edges of the city into a soggy, gray watercolor painting. Tiny streams of water raced along the sidewalks, carrying leaves and other debris. Among the faceless crowds hustling to get home, a small figure trudged alone, a broken green notebook clutched tightly to his chest. Izuku Midoriya sniffed and wiped his arm across his face, not sure whether he was trying to wipe away the rain or the tears. Probably both. The words still echoed in his mind. Jump off the roof and pray you get a quirk in your next life. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 Bakugo had said it casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The boy who had once been his friend. The boy he had admired. Izuku's fingers tightened around his notebook until the paper crumpled under the pressure. He could still hear the laughter of the others. See the way they jeered and pointed, like he was some kind of outsider daring to walk among them. You're not like them, the voice inside him whispered. The raw, festering hurt he kept buried under a polite smile every day. He wasn't like them. He would never be like them. No quirk. No flashy powers. No chance at you. Or becoming a pro-hero, not in the eyes of the world. But Izuku Midoriya wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not ever. The rain only grew heavier. Thunder rolled across the sky like a giant's roar. Cutting through a side alley to avoid the main street, Izuku slipped on a slick patch of concrete and landed hard, scraping his palms. Damn it, he muttered under his breath, a rare curse. He sat there for a moment, staring at his hands, feeling the hopelessness creep up his spine like a living thing. Why am I even trying anymore? He thought. Then, something strange caught his eye. Through the sheets of rain, tucked away behind a collapsed fence and piles of broken concrete, a faint red glow flickered like a heartbeat. Curiosity overrode common sense. Slowly, warily, Izuku pushed himself to his feet and stumbled toward the light. It was a gauntlet. Or at least, it looked like one, battered, ancient, half buried in the rubble. Embedded in the back of it was a jewel, glowing with a soft but insistent red. It pulsed in time with his own heartbeat. He reached out without thinking, his fingers brushing the cold metal, and the world changed. In an instant, the rain, the cold, the ache in his chest, all of it vanished. Izuku found himself standing in a place that defied logic, a swirling void of crimson and gold. Before him, a magnificent creature hovered in the air, scales as bright as molten metal, wings that stretched wider than city blocks, eyes burning with intelligence and power. A dragon. Its voice rumbled like an earthquake through the void. Finally, it said, "A worthy host." Izuku stumbled back, heart racing. He gasped. The dragon's massive head dipped toward him, and despite every instinct in his body screaming at him to run, Izuku stood his ground. "You are not like the others," the dragon continued, amusement and approval flickering in its voice. "Weak, perhaps, but your spirit, your resolve, they burn brighter than most." Izuku swallowed hard. What are you?" The dragon chuckled, a sound that shook the very air. "I am Ddraig, the Red Dragon Emperor, the Scarlet Inferno that once shook the heavens. And you, boy, are my new partner." Partner. The word hit Izuku harder than he expected. He had never been chosen for anything before. He had been overlooked, ignored, laughed at. And now, a being of unimaginable power was choosing him. "Why me?" Izuku asked, voice cracking. "I'm Quirkless. I'm nobody." "No," Ddraig said simply. "You are not a nobody. You are someone who has been overlooked, betrayed, broken. Yet here you stand, still burning." The dragon's voice softened, almost gentle. "You have the heart of a king, child. The will to fight against a world that scorned you. That is more precious than any birthright." The words filled a hole in Izuku's chest he hadn't even realized was there. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly he asked, "What do you want from me?" Ddraig laughed again, a great booming sound. "Only what you already longing. Strength, freedom, power." The dragon leaned closer, its colossal eye filling Izuku's vision. "Take my power, boy. Rise above the challenges that dared to call you weak. Show them that the greatest power is not something you are born with. It is something you seize with your own two hands." The void shuddered. Izuku could see flashes, visions, of what could be. Him standing atop shattered mountains, clad in brilliant crimson armor. Him driving back villains and monsters alike with a single blow. Him smiling, proud and unafraid, as the world finally looked at him with awe instead of pity. All he had to do was reach out. Back in the real world, Izuku's fingers closed around the gauntlet. A rush of warmth tore through him, not painful but overwhelming. It filled him with energy, igniting a spark within his very soul. He cried out, falling to his knees, as the boosted gear etched itself into his left arm, leaving behind a mark that glowed faintly even under the rain. "Boosted gear," he whispered. The gauntlet formed fully, its red metal gleaming in the storm. Strange inscriptions glowed along its surface, whispering forgotten power. "Do not fear," Ddraig's voice echoed in his mind now, closer, like a companion standing at his shoulder. "This is only the beginning." Izuku breathed heavily, staring at the gauntlet in awe. He could feel it, the raw, sleeping might coiled inside the gear. Like a volcano waiting to erupt. And deep inside his chest, something ancient and primal stirred. Not just the longing to be a hero. Not just the dream of saving others. No, something far more personal. The hunger to never be powerless again. Slowly, shakily, he pushed himself to his feet. He thought of 𝐒𝐿𝐲. Of all the times the blonde boy had sneered at him, kicked him, humiliated him. Of the way society had turned a blind eye, because after all, who cared about a quirkless nobody? Izuku clenched his fist, the boosted gear glowing brighter in response. "I don't need your approval anymore, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. I don't need anyone's approval." He turned, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, and began to walk. Each step felt lighter. Stronger. As if the earth itself could barely contain him now. "You and I," Ddraig said, a rumble of satisfaction in his voice, "will carve our own destiny. With fire. With fury. With might that will shake the stars themselves." Izuku smiled, a fierce, trembling grin he couldn't suppress. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing after others' dreams. This time, he would forge his own. Far above, unseen through the storm, something ancient stirred in response to Ddraig's awakening. Eyes, some golden, some black, some crimson, turned toward Japan. The Red Dragon Emperor had risen again. And the world would never be the same. The next morning, the city was bathed in crisp, golden sunlight, as if the storm from the night before had never happened. But for Izuku Midoriya, nothing would ever be the same again. He sat at the far end of the classroom, his left hand hidden under the desk. Every so often, the faint red glow of the boosted gear flickered beneath the sleeve of his uniform, invisible to everyone else. Or at least, he hoped it was invisible. "Relax, boy," Ddraig rumbled inside his mind, the dragon's voice far more casual now. "I am not so easily detected by common rabble." Izuku barely hid his sigh of relief. The last thing he needed was some teacher or government official questioning him about quirk irregularities. He tapped his fingers against the desk. His heart was racing, but not with fear. For the first time, it raced with anticipation. He wanted someone to come at him. He wanted 𝐒𝐿𝐲 to shove him again. He wanted the chance to show the world that he wasn't the timid boy they had gotten used to pushing around. Today, everything changed. It didn't take long. As class ended, and students poured out of the room like a herd of chattering sheep, Izuku quietly gathered his things. He could feel 𝐒𝐿𝐲's glare like a spotlight on the back of his neck. The footsteps came fast, heavy stomping boots. "Oi, Deku," 𝐒𝐿𝐲 barked, voice sharp. "Heard you tried for you? Again. Pathetic." Izuku didn't flinch. Didn't cower. Didn't even turn around at first. He finished packing his bag calmly. 𝐒𝐿𝐲's frustration ignited instantly. I'm talking to you, nerd. He snapped, grabbing the strap of Izuku's backpack and yanking him around. Izuku let himself be turned, but he didn't stumble. He stood firm, staring up at Bakugo with a steady gaze that made the blonde falter for just a fraction of a second. Something was different. Something was wrong. Deku, Bakugo said again, but this time there was less fire behind it. More confusion. Izuku exhaled slowly through his nose. Then, without raising his voice, without a trace of fear, he said, "Don't call me that." The words echoed through the hallway, drawing the attention of other students who sensed something was off. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Bakugo sneered, trying to assert his demps. "What, suddenly think you're better than me, quirkless loser?" Izuku tilted his head slightly. "No," he replied. "I'm just tired of pretending you're anything more than what you really are." Bakugo's nostrils flared. "What's that supposed to mean?" Izuku took a step forward, just one, but it was enough to make Bakugo instinctively brace himself. "Katsuki," Izuku said, the name feeling heavy on his tongue. "You're nothing special." The hallway fell silent. Bakugo's face flushed with anger. "No one calls me that," he shouted, raising his hand, ready to unleash his power. Without thinking, Izuku reached out with his left arm. A surge of energy coursed through him, sharpening his reflexes and slowing the world around him. Izuku caught Bakugo's wrist mid-swing, gripping it firmly. The small explosion fizzled out harmlessly in the air. Bakugo struggled, but Izuku's grip was unyielding. "Katsuki," Izuku said again, louder now. "You've spent your whole life trying to climb a ladder by stepping on other people's faces. You thought you were born at the top." He tightened his grip just enough to make Bakugo wince. "But you're just another scared kid who's terrified of being left behind." The words struck hard. Bakugo yanked himself free and stumbled back. "You think you're tough now?" he spat. "You think a couple of workouts make you better than me?" Izuku smiled, a calm and almost pitying smile that sent a chill through the watching students. "No," he said. "I'm better than you because I'm not chained to the person I used to be." Bakugo charged at him. This time, Izuku didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack. Boosting again, he felt the familiar surge of power. Bakugo threw a wild punch, but Izuku swayed slightly to the left, letting the punch sail past him, then drove his palm into Bakugo's midsection. The impact was powerful, sending Bakugo to the ground, where he skidded before coming to a stop. Gasps filled the air. Someone recorded it on their phone, but Izuku didn't glance at the crowd as he walked forward, slow and measured, until he stood over Bakugo's trembling form. For a long moment he just looked at him. This was the boy who had bullied him for years, the boy who had made his life difficult. And now, he looked so small. "Katsuki Bakugo," Izuku said quietly. "The future #1 hero." Bakugo tried to rise, but his arms shook beneath him. "I don't hate you," Izuku continued, his voice steady. "You're not worth hating." Bakugo flinched as if he'd been struck. "I'm moving on," Izuku said. "You're stuck here. In the past." He turned away without waiting for a response. The crowd parted before him. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He walked out of the school building with a sense of purpose. "That was impressive," Ddraig said with approval in his mind. Izuku smiled faintly, his heart racing. He found an empty park bench a few blocks away and sat down, exhaling deeply. The energy within him began to settle. He flexed his hand, feeling the lingering power beneath his skin, like a song he hadn't yet learned the words to. That was only 2 boosts, he thought, amazed. And I could already handle someone like Bakugo. "Correct," Ddraig replied. "Boosted gear allows you to double your power every 10 seconds. With each subsequent boost, your strength, speed, endurance, and resilience increase significantly." Izuku's eyes widened. "Wait, so if I kept boosting?" "In theory, you could achieve incredible strength," Ddraig said casually. "In practice, your body would need to be properly trained to handle it." Izuku swallowed hard. This wasn't a free ride. It was a tool that required respect and mastery. "And if I activate too many boosts at once?" he thought. "Your body would not be able to withstand it," Ddraig warned. Izuku winced. "Good to know." Still, a slow, fierce grin curled his lips. He had a path now. A real one. Not a fake dream that would crumble at the first sign of opposition. He had the power to fight for himself. But more importantly, he had the power to protect others. He would still be a hero. Just not the kind the world was used to. Not the golden, smiling idol on posters. He would be the hero who carved a new path with determination and courage. The hero who could stand between the weak and the storms of the world, and not be moved. Izuku Midoriya, the Red Dragon Emperor. Meanwhile, back at the school, Bakugo sat alone in the courtyard, his hands trembling. His stomach still throbbed from the earlier confrontation, but worse was the shame burning in his chest. He had been defeated. Not by some hotshot pro. Not by a monster villain. By Deku. By a quirkless classmate who had dared to call him by his real name. Bakugo gritted his teeth, feeling a mix of frustration and confusion. But deep down, a tiny voice, a voice he had spent years ignoring, whispered something he couldn't deny. You're not the strongest anymore. Maybe. You never were. Chapter 3. A new beat. The morning air was crisp and sharp, biting at Izuku's lungs as he sprinted up the uneven stone steps of Dagobah Municipal Park. Each step burned. Each step was a reminder that strength wasn't given, it was earned. Again, Ddraig commanded inside his mind, voice like molten iron. Focus your breathing. Tighten your core. You must not waste motion. Izuku gritted his teeth and kept moving. Sweat poured down his back, soaking his old gym shirt. His legs screamed in protest, but he ignored them. Pain meant growth. Pain meant progress. At the top of the hill, he collapsed onto a bench, gasping for air. His left arm tingled faintly, the boosted gear dormant but ever-present. Good, Ddraig rumbled. You are beginning to understand. Strength is not simply about power. It is about control. Mastery of body and mind. Izuku wiped his face with a towel, heart still hammering. I get it, he breathed. I can't just rely on the boosts. I have to be strong enough to survive them. Exactly, Ddraig said, and Izuku could almost hear the dragon nod approvingly. We will push your limits, boy. Break you down and rebuild you stronger. Izuku nodded firmly. He wasn't doing this for glory. He wasn't doing this for revenge. He was doing it because for the first time, he believed he could. Later that afternoon, after a challenging round of bodyweight circuits and sprint drills, Izuku made his way to a small shopping district near 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴 Station. He needed new training clothes, something durable enough to survive his boosts. His old sneakers had practically worn out after yesterday's sparring session against a tree. As he browsed through the athletic store, he barely noticed the girl standing near the audio equipment section. Short, dark purple hair. Her hair was chin-length with an asymmetrical fringe that had two reflections shaped like sound waves on either side. Onyx eyes sharp and bored. She wore a black jacket over a red shirt, ripped jeans, and heavy boots. A few audio jack cables dangled from her earlobes like unique accessories. She tapped one foot impatiently, scrolling through her phone. Izuku blinked. He recognized her from somewhere, not school, but maybe from the entrance exam pamphlet he'd studied obsessively. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, he remembered. Recommended applicant. Sound-based quirk. Not that he had stalked all the hopefuls. Okay, maybe just a little. As he turned back to the rack of sneakers, he heard raised voices. Hey, what's up? A rough voice said. Izuku glanced over his shoulder. 3 older teens, maybe third years from some rough high school, had cornered 𝐻𝗼. Big guys, too, the kind who thought their quirks made them untouchable. Don't be like that, one of them said with a smirk. We're just trying to be friendly. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 scowled, crossing her arms. Not interested, she said flatly. One of the guys reached out, trying to snag her arm. Izuku's vision narrowed instantly. Without thinking, he set down his shopping basket and walked over. Calmly. Deliberately. She said she's not interested, he said, voice steady. The guys turned to look at him. One snorted. Beat it, green bean. Izuku met his gaze without flinching. A tiny part of him marveled at the difference. Even a few days ago, he would have stammered and frozen. But now there was a dragon coiled inside his chest. He could feel the boosted gear's slow pulse under his skin, ready if needed. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 raised an eyebrow, studying him with new interest. The biggest thug cracked his knuckles. You want some too? Izuku smiled slightly. No, he said. I just don't like bullies. The thug growled and lunged. The world shifted. Boost. The familiar whisper of power flooded Izuku's veins. He sidestepped the clumsy punch with ease, pivoted, and slammed his palm into the guy's chest, not hard enough to break ribs, but enough to send him sprawling into a display rack with a loud crash. The other two hesitated. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 smirked. You heard him, she said dryly, yanking her earjacks free. Electric energy crackled between them. If you're still feeling stupid, I can help fry your eardrums. The thugs cursed and scrambled away, dragging their dazed friend with them. The store manager peeked out from behind the counter, pale and wide-eyed, but said nothing. Izuku exhaled slowly, letting the boosted gear fade back into dormancy. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the lingering rush of power. He turned to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. You okay? She snorted. I had it handled. Izuku smiled sheepishly. Sorry. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 studied him for a long moment. You're not bad, she said finally. For a civilian. Izuku hesitated. Then quietly he said, I'm not just a civilian. I'm aiming for you. Her eyes widened slightly. No kidding. He nodded. Name's Izuku Midoriya. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, she said, tapping her earjack lightly. Guess we're both trying to survive the meat grinder. Izuku chuckled. Yeah. There was an awkward pause. Then, surprising even himself, Izuku said, Want to train together sometime? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 raised an eyebrow. You serious? He nodded. I could use a sparring partner who won't hold back. I don't want to do this alone anymore. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 studied him for a long moment, then shrugged, smirking. Sure. Why not? Might be fun to beat you up. Izuku laughed, genuinely. For the first time in what felt like years, something warm bloomed in his chest. Not hero worship. Not fear. Something like friendship. Maybe. That night, after a quick dinner and a cold shower, Izuku lay sprawled on his bed, staring at the ceiling. You did well today, Ddraig rumbled approvingly. Not just in battle, but in choosing your allies wisely. Izuku smiled faintly. I wasn't trying to impress her. Of course not, Ddraig said. But even dragons must recognize worthy companions. You will need them in the battles to come. Izuku closed his eyes. He could still feel the lingering charge in his muscles, the afterimage of strength just beyond his reach. He thought of Bakugo lying on the ground. He thought of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 smirking and tossing him a casual thumbs up. He thought of you, looming ahead like a mountain waiting to be climbed. A fierce, wild excitement surged through him. He wasn't the weakling anymore. He wasn't Deku the quirkless nobody. He was Izuku Midoriya, future hero. Future Red Dragon Emperor. And he was just getting started. Chapter 4, Sparks Fly. The next afternoon, the abandoned training field at the edge of Mizudafu Park sat quiet under a heavy gray sky. Cracked concrete, broken street lamps, rusted goalposts. The city had long since written it off, a place for stray cats and broken dreams. Perfect for two hopefuls who didn't want an audience. Izuku tightened the laces on his new reinforced sneakers, flexing his fingers. Across from him, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 rolled her shoulders, earbuds plugged into her phone, music thumping softly. She wore dark workout leggings, a sleeveless hoodie, and fingerless gloves, all black and purple. She caught him staring and smirked. Don't get distracted, hero boy. Izuku flushed lightly and scratched the back of his head. Sorry. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stretched lazily, jabbing one of her earjacks into a concrete barrier. The ground trembled faintly as bass vibrations shivered through the stone. She pulled it out with a flick, looking satisfied. All right, she said, tossing her phone onto a nearby bench. Ground rules. Izuku nodded. No quirks for the first 2 rounds. Just technique. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 grinned. Afraid of getting your eardrums blown out. Izuku chuckled. Afraid of ending it too fast. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. Alright, tough guy. Let's see what you've got. They squared off, an informal stance, no formal dojo ceremony. Just two kids ready to brawl. The first clash was fast and messy. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 came in low, feinting with a jab from her right fist. Izuku parried it instinctively, but the real attack was her left leg, sweeping for his ankles. He barely leapt back in time, landing in a crouch. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 grinned, circling. Not bad, she said. Most people eat pavement right about now. Izuku adjusted his stance. He surged forward, aiming for a shoulder feint and low tackle. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 twisted at the last second, flipping him over her hip, but Izuku rolled with it, popping back to his feet. The second clash was tighter. Izuku feinted high, 𝐀𝐭𝐡 ducked, but this time he anticipated her counter and caught her wrist mid-swing. He twisted, gently but firmly, locking her in a standing hold. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 grunted, trying to pull free. You're stronger than you look, she muttered. Been training, Izuku said, cheeks flushed. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 wriggled, then smirked, and drove her knee up toward his ribs. He released immediately, jumping back. That was clever, he said, breathless but grinning. You asked for it, 𝐀𝐭𝐡 said, laughing. They reset, breathing heavily but smiling. Already, a strange kind of bond was forming, not quite friendship, not yet, but respect. After 20 minutes of sparring, they called a brief truce. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 flopped onto the grass, gulping water. Izuku collapsed next to her, wiping sweat from his forehead. Okay, 𝐀𝐭𝐡 said between breaths. You're different. Izuku blinked. Thanks. She snorted. No, I mean it. You don't fight like a normal you. A hopeful. What's that supposed to mean? 𝐀𝐭𝐡 rolled onto her side, propping her head on her hand. Most guys at the entrance exams. They rely on their quirks. Flashy moves, cheap tricks, ego. She looked at him seriously. You fight like you actually know how to handle yourself. Izuku smiled faintly. I had to. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 studied him a moment longer, then nodded, as if that answered everything. All right, she said, hopping to her feet. Round 2. Quirks allowed. Izuku stood, heart racing. All right, Midoriya. Don't embarrass yourself. Let me assist, Ddraig murmured inside his mind, sounding almost amused. Call upon my power, but lightly. A single boost should suffice to keep up. Izuku nodded. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 plugged her ear jacks into the ground again, sending a subtle vibration pulsing through the terrain. Tiny cracks formed at her feet, the earth trembling softly. Izuku activated the boosted gear, just barely. Boost. The red gauntlet materialized over his left arm, glowing faintly. 𝐀𝐭𝐡's eyes widened. What the heck? Izuku grinned sheepishly. Long story. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 didn't ask, not yet. Instead, she charged. Her vibrations sent mini shockwaves along the ground, aiming to destabilize his footing. Izuku countered by boosting forward, skimming just above the ground with enhanced speed. Their clashes were faster now, 𝐀𝐭𝐡 ducking, weaving, her ear jacks lashing out like WHs. Izuku dodged narrowly, feeling the air WHP past his face. One strike grazed his side. Even without maximum power, it stung. He countered with a feint, a sudden burst of speed that 𝐀𝐭𝐡 barely managed to dodge, and drove his palm toward her sternum. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 twisted, letting the blow glance off her shoulder, but the force sent her stumbling back. She recovered instantly, crouching low. All right, Midoriya, she said, grinning wide. You're holding out on me. Izuku smiled back. Maybe a little. 𝐀𝐭𝐡 lunged again, faster now, her quirk pushing her mobility past normal limits. Izuku boosted, just once, and sidestepped. At the last second, something clicked inside him. A surge of energy, different from before. The boosted gear pulsed. Red scales shimmered faintly along his left shoulder and collarbone. A partial armor, raw and unstable, but real. 𝐀𝐭𝐡's eyes widened mid-swing. Izuku caught her punch, gently, and pivoted, redirecting her momentum. She flipped over his back, landing with a grunt but rolling smoothly. The two stared at each other, breathing. The red scales faded from Izuku's skin as the boosted gear retracted slightly. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 wiped her mouth and stood, breathing heavily. Okay, she said finally. That was impressive. Izuku laughed, winded and exhilarated. I'm still figuring it out. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 smirked. Yeah, no kidding. They collapsed onto the grass again, shoulders brushing. Neither moved away. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in gold and violet, they sat side by side on the cracked bleachers, sipping canned drinks from a nearby vending machine. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 drummed her fingers against the bench absently. So, she said casually, you gonna tell me what that thing is? Izuku hesitated. Then, slowly he said, it's called the boosted gear. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 arched an eyebrow. That's not a quirk. No, Izuku said. It's something different. He looked down at his gloved hand, flexing his fingers. I got it recently. It's complicated. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 nodded, not pressing further. Instead, she leaned back, staring at the sky. You're gonna be something else once you figure that thing out. Izuku chuckled. I'm already something, he said, surprising even himself with the confidence in his voice. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 laughed. Yeah, you are. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. No expectations. No judgment. Just two kids chasing impossible dreams under a sky too big to understand. As Izuku walked home later, Ddraig's voice rumbled quietly in his mind. You are forging bonds, boy. I guess so, Izuku said, smiling. But even the mightiest dragon needs allies. Izuku thought of 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's smirk, her fierce eyes, her sharp wit. He thought of you, looming ahead. He thought of the power crackling just under his skin, waiting to be unleashed. He clenched his fist. He was ready. Ready to climb higher. Ready to fight. Ready to soar. Chapter 5. Bonds and Promises. The second week of summer blazed over 𝐒𝐮𝐴 like a furnace. Cicadas shrieked in the trees. Concrete radiated heat. And in the battered remains of an old public training ground, two teenagers faced off once again. Izuku Midoriya grinned across the cracked asphalt at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Sweat dripped down his brow, but his breathing was even. Across from him, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 twirled one of her ear jacks around her finger, smirking lazily. Come on, hero boy, she called. Don't tell me you're tired already. Izuku boosted forward in a blur of motion, the faint red shimmer of the boosted gear lighting up his left arm. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 dodged under his strike and countered with a low sweep. Izuku hopped over it, twisting midair to land behind her. She whirled, ear jacks snapping forward, but Izuku caught them lightly in one hand and pulled. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 yelped, stumbling toward him, only to grin wickedly and ram her knee toward his stomach. Izuku barely twisted out of the way. They broke apart, both breathing hard but grinning. That was dirty, Izuku said, laughing. Should have expected it, nerd, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said, flicking sweat-soaked bangs from her face. They reset. The sun hammered down. The world narrowed to the sound of their breathing, the crack of their movements, the pulsing fire in their veins. An hour later, they collapsed in the shade of a crumbling wall, sharing lukewarm bottled water. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 lay sprawled out, arms flung wide, staring at the blue sky. Izuku sat cross-legged beside her, absently tapping his fingers against his knee. So, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said after a while, voice lazy. Same time next week. Izuku blinked. You mean, make this a regular thing? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 rolled her eyes. No, I mean we only train when the mood strikes. Izuku laughed. No, I'd like that. A lot. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 smirked, closing one eye against the sun. Good. You're annoying but you're good practice. Izuku chuckled, feeling something warm and genuine curl in his chest. For so long he had trained alone, fought alone, doubted alone. But now he wasn't alone. Not entirely. They shook hands, rough and quick and simple. An agreement. A promise. Every Saturday afternoon, rain or shine, they would meet here and push each other to the breaking point. Together. Over the next few weeks, the routine became almost sacred. Saturday mornings, stretching, bodyweight exercises, sparring drills. Afternoons, quirk practice, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 refining her sound-based attacks, Izuku working to MSTR controlled boosts without tearing the ground apart. Evenings, collapsed side by side in the fading light, trading playful banter and snacks. Each week, Izuku pushed a little harder. Each week, 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 smiled a little wider. Ddraig, ever watchful, rumbled approvingly in Izuku's mind. You are growing, boy. Not just in power. In spirit. And Izuku could feel it. The boy who had once flinched at a harsh word, who had once worshipped Bakugo's every cruel breath, that boy was gone. In his place stood something new. Something stronger. Late August brought the hottest day yet, the air thick and heavy with the promise of rain. Izuku and 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡 stood at opposite ends of the training ground, both breathing, both grinning like maniacs. Izuku's left arm gleamed under the sun, the boosted gear active, red scales creeping halfway up his bicep now. Not full armor yet, but more than just a gauntlet. 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡's earjacks buzzed with contained energy, faint sonic vibrations dancing around her boots. They charged at the same moment. 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡 lashed out with a sharp burst of bass shockwaves. Izuku boosted forward, skimming just under the worst of it, and closed the distance. Their clash echoed through the empty park like thunder. Fist met shockwave. Earjack met armored gauntlet. The ground cracked beneath them. For a moment, they were perfectly balanced. 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡's eyes blazing, Izuku's teeth bared in a grin of pure joy. Then they both staggered back, laughing breathlessly. You're incredible, 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡 breathed. Says the girl trying to keep up with me, Izuku shot back. They collapsed onto the grass again, gulping water and skiing in great lungfuls of humid air. After a long, comfortable silence, you're getting faster, 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡 said to Izuku, who smiled faintly. Thanks. You're hitting harder. 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡 smirked. Guess we're both scary now. He laughed, the sound pure and unburdened. For the first time in years, he believed it. That evening, after parting ways with a casual fist bump, Izuku made his way home. The tiny apartment smelled of fresh rice and grilled fish. Mom's cooking, he thought, heart-lifting. His mom greeted him at the door, her usual wide smile faltering slightly when she saw how scuffed and sweaty he was. Hi, sweetie, she said, voice carefully light. Training again. Izuku grinned sheepishly. Yeah, sorry. I'll shower before dinner. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡 waved him off, bustling back into the kitchen. As Izuku peeled off his ruined sneakers and headed for the bathroom, he caught her watching him out of the corner of his eye. Not with fear. Not even with worry. With something like awe. After his shower, they sat down to a simple dinner, grilled salmon, miso soup, pickled vegetables. 𝐻𝐿𝐭𝐡 chatted about the neighborhood gossip, the new supermarket opening down the street, the rising prices of hero memorabilia. Izuku listened, grateful for the normalcy. But after a while, 𝐻𝐿𝐭𝐡 set down her chopsticks and looked at him seriously. Izuku, she said quietly. You've changed. He froze. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Not in a bad way, she said quickly. Stronger. Happier. Izuku swallowed. I'm just training harder. Believing in myself more. 𝐻𝐿𝐭𝐡 squeezed his fingers. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. I always was. But now. Her eyes shimmered. Now you believe in yourself too. Izuku felt something thick and hot clog his throat. He squeezed back. Thanks, Mom. She smiled brightly, blinking fast. And whatever secret weapon you're working on, she added, nudging him playfully. Just don't blow up the apartment, okay? Izuku laughed, a little choked. I promise. They finished dinner in comfortable silence, the TV playing quietly in the background. For the first time in what felt like forever, Izuku went to bed with a full heart. Not heavy with regret. Not hollow with doubt. Later that night as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead, Ddraig spoke quietly in his mind. She sees your light, boy, even if she does not know its source. Izuku smiled into the darkness. I'm lucky, he whispered. Make her pride justified, Ddraig said solemnly. Izuku clenched his fist under the covers, feeling the faint hum of the boosted gear resting dormant in his body. I will, he promised. For his mother. For himself. For the boy who had once been powerless, and the man he was becoming. The man he would choose to be. The first sharp winds of September carried with them the heavy scent of rain and change. Leaves rustled along the cracked sidewalks. Storm clouds loomed distant and heavy above 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐻. And somewhere, in the hollow space between heartbeats, the world itself seemed to be holding its breath. For Izuku Midoriya, the countdown had begun. The 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽𝐻 entrance exams were officially 4 weeks away. 30 days. 720 hours. 43,000 minutes. He knew because he had counted them all. Saturday again. Their sanctuary, the abandoned training ground, looked battered and worn under the sullen gray sky. Grass pushed through broken asphalt. The distant boom of a hero fight training session echoed from another district. Izuku bounced lightly on the ball of his feet, rolling his shoulders, feeling the quiet hum of power sleeping inside him. Across from him, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 adjusted the worn straps on her boots, a focused frown on her face. "You're twitchier than usual," she noted, plugging one ear jack into a wrist speaker. Izuku shrugged. "Exams?" he said simply. 𝐀𝐿𝐻 smirked faintly. "The big leagues." She twirled her other ear jack lazily. "Ready to get your butt kicked?" Izuku laughed, but there was an edge to it, a tension even he couldn't deny. "Bring it." Their sparring session that day was different. Sharper. Meaner. More real. Every punch was a little faster. Every dodge was a little closer. Every counterattack came with a little more weight behind it. Izuku boosted more carefully now, not wild blasts of power, but short, surgical bursts that flickered red along his legs or arms at just the right moment. 𝐀𝐿𝐻 adapted quickly, using her sonic bursts not just offensively but to propel herself sideways, unpredictable as lightning. They clashed again and again, both driven by an invisible clock ticking down over their heads. The future was rushing toward them like a freight train, and neither one intended to be left behind. After 2 hours, they collapsed in the shade, bruised, grinning, and exhausted. 𝐀𝐿𝐻 tossed Izuku a sports drink. He caught it without looking, cracking it open with a hiss. "So," 𝐀𝐿𝐻 said between gulps of her own drink. "Plan for next month." Izuku wiped sweat from his forehead. "Training. Harder. Smarter." 𝐀𝐿𝐻 smirked. "Helpful. Very specific." He laughed. "I mean it. Focus drills. Speed runs. Simulating the written exam too. We can't just fight." 𝐀𝐿𝐻 groaned, flopping dramatically onto her back. "Ugh, homework." Izuku chuckled, lying back beside her. The sky overhead was a swirling mass of gray clouds. Thunder rumbled faintly, miles away. He thought about Ddraig's challenge. Claim your strength, shape it, or be destroyed by it. He thought about his mother's quiet, trembling pride. Izuku clenched his fists against the rough grass. He would not fail. Not now. Not ever again. They trained harder over the next 3 weeks than Izuku had ever thought possible. Morning runs before sunrise. Weight circuits in the afternoon. Sparring at dusk until the stars came out. At night, he and 𝐀𝐿𝐻 would crash in the grass, bruised and aching and laughing weakly about how tired they were going to be tomorrow. It was tough. It was rewarding. And slowly, Izuku felt something shift inside him. Not just the strength in his limbs, or the control in his movements. Something deeper. A foundation being laid brick by brick. A new version of himself, rising from the rubble of the past. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of red, 𝐀𝐿𝐻 and Izuku sat side by side, sharing a pack of fries from a street vendor. "You're different," 𝐀𝐿𝐻 said suddenly. Izuku blinked at her. "Thanks." 𝐀𝐿𝐻 rolled her eyes. "Not just stronger, idiot. You're steadier." She waved vaguely. "Like you know what you're aiming for." Izuku stared at the sunset, the fries forgotten in his hand. "I have to be," he said quietly. 𝐀𝐿𝐻 didn't press. She didn't have to. She just nudged his shoulder with hers, a small, simple gesture. And for the first time, Izuku realized something. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for everyone who believed in him. 𝐀𝐿𝐻. His mom. Maybe, someday, the world itself. The night before the entrance exam, Izuku could barely sleep. He tossed and turned, staring at the faint glow of his All Might poster in the darkness. "Am I ready?" he thought. "Have I done enough?" In the back of his mind, Ddraig rumbled with lazy confidence. You have forged yourself in flame and pressure, boy. You are ready to face your first true challenge. Izuku smiled faintly. Tomorrow everything would begin. The morning of the exam dawned cold and damp. Mist coiled through the streets like ghostly fingers. Izuku stood at the bus stop in his workout gear, backpack slung over one shoulder, heart hammering against his ribs. Across the street, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 leaned against a lamppost, one earbud in, bobbing her head to some heavy bass track. She caught his eye and grinned, flashing a thumbs up. Izuku grinned back, nerves settling slightly. They rode the bus together, crammed shoulder to shoulder with dozens of other hopefuls. The tension was palpable, a silent, heavy pressure that filled the air. Everyone here wanted it. Everyone here had trained for it. But not everyone had faced what Izuku had. Not everyone had clawed their way up from nothing. Not everyone had a dragon whispering power in their bones. As they filed into the massive front courtyard, Izuku felt a strange mixture of awe and certainty. This was it, the starting line of his new life. He caught sight of familiar faces, students from other schools, a few minor local celebrities. Bakugo Katsuki stalked through the crowd, radiating confidence, shoving a smaller kid aside with a frown. 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 muttered something under her breath. Izuku just shook his head. Forget him, he said. He meant it. Bakugo was the past. The future was all that mattered now. The written portion was challenging but manageable. 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was a surprising genius at math, breezing through her papers with ease while Izuku focused HRD on every question. Still he passed, not top of the class but solid enough. Good enough. And then, the practical. Robot combat zone. Urban environment simulation. No holds barred. As Izuku stood in the starting zone, stretching lightly, he felt his heart settle into a calm, powerful rhythm. This was what he was made for. Not standing on the sidelines. Not cowering behind others. Charging forward. Becoming a hero. He caught sight of 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 a few meters away. She winked at him, pulling her earjacks taut. She grinned. The signal horn blared. And Izuku Midoriya leapt into action. He moved with determination, energy sparking along his legs with each boost-enhanced stride. Robots loomed ahead, towering, metallic obstacles. Izuku didn't hesitate. He ducked under a wild swing from a three-pointer, vaulted onto its chest, and drove a boosted fist straight through its main processor. The machine sparked and fizzled. Izuku landed in a crouch, already scanning for the next target. Every second mattered. Every point counted. He lost himself in the flow of it, dodging, striking, boosting forward like a red comet. Across the battlefield, he caught glimpses of 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, using sonic blasts to shatter smaller bots, riding shockwaves to launch herself into the air. Pride swelled in his chest. They were doing it. They were winning. 20 minutes in, breathing and bruised, Izuku skidded to a halt atop a collapsed wall. He spotted a smaller girl trapped under rubble, struggling as a massive zero-pointer bore down on her. His heart raced. No points for saving others. Only wasted time. But to heck with points. Izuku boosted forward, faster than he ever had before. He slammed into the rubble, boosting his strength just enough to shift the stones. The girl scrambled free with a gasp. Izuku shoved her toward safety, turning just in time to face the descending fist of the zero-pointer. He boosted sideways, narrowly avoiding a crushing blow. The impact cracked the ground where he had stood. Izuku rolled to his feet, breathing hard. No way he could fight something that big head-on. But maybe. He glanced at the exposed joint where the robot's arm connected to its torso. A weak point. He boosted forward. Red energy flared. He poured every ounce of stored power into his left fist. The boosted gear gleamed like molten fire. He struck. A roar echoed across the battlefield, part mechanical, part something deeper. The zero-pointer's arm shattered. The machine staggered, destabilized, and toppled with a seismic crash. Silence followed. Then, distant cheering. Izuku swayed on his feet, heart hammering. He grinned. Not from relief. From triumph. He had done it. As the exam ended and the survivors limped toward the gates, Izuku spotted Kyoka threading through the crowd toward him. "You crazy hero," she said, playfully punching his arm. Izuku laughed. "You too." They didn't need more words. They had survived. They had fought. They had won. That night, lying in bed, sore and bone-deep tired, Izuku almost drifted off immediately. Almost. Because just before he fell asleep, a faint ripple shivered through the air around him. The boosted gear flared briefly on his arm, uncalled. Ddraig's voice rumbled low and serious. "Something stirs, boy. Beyond the exams. Beyond the heroes." Izuku sat up sharply, heart racing. "What do you mean?" But Ddraig fell silent. The night pressed against the windows, thick and strange. And somewhere, far away but drawing closer, something. Something that recognized the ancient, sleeping power now stirring in Mizudafu. Something that hungered for it. Izuku clenched his fists, the boosted gear humming faintly under his skin. The exam was over. The real battle hadn't even begun. Chapter 7. Whispers beyond the sky. Rain pattered softly against the windows. The smell of grilled fish and miso soup hung heavy in the small Midoriya apartment. Izuku sat at the kitchen table, chopsticks trembling slightly between his fingers as he stared at the untouched food before him. It was salmon, rice, soup, a little pickled plum on the side. A meal meant to be comforting, familiar. But he couldn't force a single bite down. Not tonight. 3 days had passed since the entrance exam. 3 days since he'd fought robots bigger than buildings, since he'd saved a girl's life at the cost of precious time, since he'd felt the full, blazing power of his boosted gear in combat. 3 days of waiting. Second-guessing every move he'd made. Of replaying every moment in his head until it blurred and twisted. He was exhausted in a way even training couldn't touch, a deep ache of uncertainty gnawing at his chest. Would it be enough? Would he be enough? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 Midoriya bustled gently around the kitchen, trying to act normal. She knew her son too well to miss the signs. The hunched shoulders, the distant stare, the way he poked mechanically at his food without really tasting it. Finally, she set down a small bowl of extra rice in front of him and ruffled his hair. "You did your best, sweetie," she said softly. "That's all anyone could ask for." Izuku swallowed hard past the lump in his throat. He nodded, managing a shaky smile. "I know, ma. Thanks." She kissed the top of his head, lingering just a moment longer than usual, then retreated into the living room, giving him space. Izuku stared at his food a little longer. Then, almost on autopilot, he pulled out his phone. There was only one person he wanted to talk to right now. He thumbed through his contacts, found 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, and hit call. The line rang twice before she picked up. "Yo, nerd." Kyoka's voice crackled through the speaker, familiar and warm. "What's up?" Izuku huffed a tired laugh, the tension in his chest loosening just a little. Can't sleep. Thinking too much," he admitted. Kyoka snorted. "Join the club. I've been stress drumming on my wall so much my parents threatened to ground me." Izuku chuckled weakly. Seriously? Seriously. They said if I dent the walls one more time, they're putting a lock on my drumsticks." He could picture her perfectly, sprawled out on her bed, earjacks plugged into some blaring punk rock, tapping frantic rhythms against anything within reach. The image made him feel less alone. "I guess. It's normal to feel like this, right?" Izuku said, twisting a chopstick between his fingers. Kyoka made a thoughtful noise. "Yeah. But it also means you care, you know. If you didn't give a CRP, you wouldn't be so freaked out." Izuku nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see it. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I care a lot." There was a short, comfortable silence between them. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming against the windows like soft fingertips. Then, without warning, the apartment lights flickered. Izuku froze, phone pressed against his ear. A low, almost inaudible hum filled the air, like a distant engine revving up. "Kyoka," Izuku said slowly. "Yeah," she replied, voice sharp with sudden alertness. "Did your lights just flicker?" What? The hum grew louder. Izuku's heart hammered against his ribs. His skin prickled with static electricity. He looked around the kitchen. Everything seemed normal but wrong at the same time. The shadows stretched just a little too long. The colors seemed just a little too faded. "Something's happening," he whispered. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's voice sharpened. "Izuku, where are you?" "Home. In the kitchen." "Stay put. Don't move." The hum rose to a higher pitch, almost painful. Izuku winced, clapping a hand over his free ear. The rain outside slowed unnaturally, drops hanging in midair. Izuku stumbled to his feet, the phone nearly slipping from his grasp. His reflection in the kitchen window shimmered, and for a split second, it wasn't his face staring back. It was something older. A shadow rippled across the glass, flickering in and out of existence. "Izuku." 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's voice snapped through the phone. "Talk to me. What's happening?" Izuku gasped, forcing his gaze away from the window. "I don't know." He stumbled back toward the table, heart racing. The hum throbbed in the air, filling the space around him. Ddraig's voice rumbled inside his mind, low, steady, commanding. "Be calm, partner. This is but an echo. A whisper of the true world awakening to your presence." "An echo?" Izuku thought frantically. "Your existence has changed," Ddraig said. "Your strength has breached the thin veil between mortal and myth. They are beginning to notice." "Who?" Izuku demanded. "Those who hunger for power. Those who fear it. Those who would claim you. Or destroy you." Izuku gritted his teeth. He didn't know what any of that meant. Didn't know what he was supposed to do. But instinct screamed that running, hiding, would do no good. He had to stand. He had to face it. Even if he didn't understand it yet. The hum peaked, and then, with a crack like thunder, the apartment lights snapped back to full brightness. The rain resumed its natural fall, hitting the windows in a sudden, chaotic staccato. Izuku stood trembling in the center of the kitchen, phone pressed white-knuckled against his ear. "Izuku," 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said, voice small and scared now. "I'm here," he croaked, breathing hard. "Alive." The reflection in the window showed only himself again, pale, wide-eyed, shaken. 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 let out a long, shaky breath. "What just happened?" "I don't know," Izuku said honestly. "But it's not over. Something's coming." Another long silence. Then 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's voice, steadier this time, "Whatever it is. We'll face it together. Got it?" Izuku smiled, even as a shiver ran down his spine. "Yeah," he whispered. "Together." Later that night, long after he finally managed to choke down some cold rice, Izuku lay awake staring at the ceiling. The air felt heavy with unseen weight. Ddraig was silent, slumbering deep within. But Izuku knew this was just the beginning. Something had seen him. Something ancient. Something hungry. And it was only a matter of time before it came knocking. He closed his eyes, fists clenching the bedsheets. He would be ready. He had to be. For himself. For 𝐀𝐻𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. For whatever future he was racing toward. The storm was coming. And this time, Izuku Midoriya would not run. He would meet it head-on. With fire in his veins. And a dragon roaring in his soul. Chapter 8. The first howl. The night air was cool and damp, carrying the lingering scent of rain. Izuku pulled his hoodie tighter around himself as he trudged home from the local convenience store, a bag of canned coffee and snack breads dangling from one hand. His mom had fallen asleep early, worried sick about him but pretending not to be. He hadn't wanted to wake her. Besides, he needed the walk. Needed the air. Needed something to distract him from the endless gnawing anxiety. The entrance exam results would be out any day now. But it wasn't just that. Since the incident 2 nights ago, the flickering lights, the warped reflections, Izuku had felt different. Like the world had shifted around him, ever so slightly. Like he was being watched. The boosted gear slept quietly on his left arm, but he could feel it twitch sometimes, like a dragon dreaming restless dreams. He crossed an empty park on the edge of town, the swings creaking softly in the breeze. The moon hung low and heavy, half-shrouded in mist. Everything felt too quiet, too still. Izuku quickened his pace. That was when he heard it. A low growl. Guttural. Predatory. He froze, heart leaping into his throat. Slowly he turned. Something stood at the edge of the park, just beyond the old jungle gym. It was shaped like a man, tall, thin, hunched, but wrong. Its skin was ashen gray, stretched tight over bone. Its eyes glowed an unnatural yellow, slitted like a reptile's. Long claws curled from its fingertips. It smiled, revealing a mouth full of jagged teeth. And when it spoke, its voice was a wet, gurgling snarl. "You smell different, boy," it hissed. "Not quite human. Not quite beast." Izuku's breath caught. He stumbled back instinctively. The boosted gear flared awake on his arm, red light searing through his sleeve. Ddraig's voice roared in his mind. "Prepare yourself, partner. This creature is of the twilight, a lesser spawn of darkness." What? Izuku thought wildly. A ghoul made to hunt gifted BLD. It seeks power. The creature lunged. Izuku barely dodged, the thing's clawed hands slicing through the air where his chest had been a moment ago. The park bench behind him splintered from the force. Instinct took over. Izuku threw his bag aside and dropped into a loose fighting stance, just like 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and he had practiced. The ghoul snarled and circled, saliva dripping from its fangs. "Your BLD smells ancient," it hissed. Izuku gritted his teeth. "I don't know what you are," he said, voice shaking but firm. "But you're not laying a finger on anyone." The ghoul screeched and lunged again, faster this time. Izuku ducked under its swipe and drove his fist into its gut. Boosted gear-enhanced strength sent the creature staggering back, but it barely flinched. It straightened, grinning wider. "Strong," it purred. "Stronger BLD, tastier BLD." It charged again, claws flashing. Izuku moved, faster than he ever had before, but the creature matched him blow for blow. Each swipe of its claws sent sparks flying as they scraped against the armored scales forming over his arm. Izuku blocked 1, 2, 3 strikes, each impact jarring his bones. Then, he found an opening. Boosted gear pulsed. Boost. The world seemed to slow. Power surged through his muscles. Izuku ducked low, pivoted on his heel, and unleashed a powerful uppercut into the creature's chin. The ghoul's head snapped back. It stumbled, dazed. Izuku didn't wait. He followed up with a spinning kick to the side of its head, sending it crashing through a jungle gym pole. The metal warped and bent with the force. Breathing hard, Izuku backed away, keeping his guard up. The ghoul lay in a heap, twitching. For a moment, it seemed like it might stay down. Izuku dared to hope. Then, impossibly, the creature stirred. Its body twisted back to its feet. It fixed him with a burning glare, fury etched into its monstrous features. "Will be," it hissed. And then, its body began to change. Spines erupted from its back. Its fingers lengthened into sharp claws. Its jaw unhinged wider, revealing rows of teeth. It doubled in size, muscles bulging. Ddraig growled in Izuku's mind. "It adapts. Quickly. You must end this." "How?" Izuku shouted mentally, sweat pouring down his face. "Overwhelm it. Strike with everything you have, before it fully transforms." The creature charged, faster and heavier. The ground trembled under its steps. Izuku gritted his teeth, adrenaline spiking. He couldn't run. He couldn't afford to lose. Not here. Not now. Boost. The boosted gear flashed again. Izuku felt the power thrumming in his veins, wild and exhilarating. He met the creature head-on. They clashed in the center of the park, a storm of claws and fists. Izuku ducked under a swipe, slammed his elbow into the creature's side, rolled away from a counterattack. The creature howled, a screeching sound. It swung wildly, tearing into the earth. Izuku danced around it, striking fast and hard, targeting its joints, its throat, its eyes. Every impact sent shocks up his arm, but he didn't falter. Boost. Another surge. Faster. Stronger. The boosted gear's scales glowed brighter, casting red light across the dark park. The creature roared in frustration, leaping into the air, claws raised high. Izuku planted his feet, gathered his strength, focused everything he had into one final blow. Boost. Time slowed. He saw every detail, the rain glittering in the moonlight, the creature's twisted face, the faint mist rising from the ground. Izuku twisted his body, driving all his weight into an explosive punch aimed straight at the creature's chest. The impact was tremendous. A shockwave rippled out from the point of contact, flattening the nearby grass and rattling the swings. The creature's body jerked violently. Its chest caved inward with a loud noise. It let out a shriek, and then, with a final shudder, it disintegrated into black ash. The ash scattered on the breeze, leaving nothing behind. Only silence. And Izuku, trembling, gasping for breath. He staggered back, knees almost giving out. His hoodie was torn, his knuckles scraped despite the boosted gear's protection. Pain lanced through his ribs with every breath. But he was alive. He had survived. Barely. Izuku collapsed onto the nearest bench, chest heaving. His mind spun with questions he had no answers for. What was that thing? Why had it come after him? How many more were out there? Ddraig's voice rumbled, quieter now. You fought well, partner. But this was only the first. Greater foes will follow. Izuku swallowed hard. Yeah, he rasped. I figured. He sat there for a long time, the rain soaking into his clothes, the distant sounds of the city filtering back in. Eventually, he gathered his strength, retrieved his scattered groceries, and limped home under the sleeping stars. The next morning, a thin envelope sat on the kitchen table. The high school's crest stamped boldly across the front. Waiting. Silent. Heavy with the weight of everything he had fought for. Izuku stared at it, heart pounding in his ears. And deep inside him, the dragon stirred, awake and watchful. The true journey was only just beginning. Chapter 9, Rising Hopes. Watching eyes mourning, the small white envelope sat unopened on the kitchen table. Izuku stared at it, heart hammering in his chest. His fingers trembled as he reached for it. Just open it, he muttered to himself. Across the table, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 Midoriya peeked nervously around the corner, wringing her hands in her apron. Izuku gave her a tiny smile to ease her worry, even though his stomach was tied into 1,000 knots. He tore the envelope open. A small, silver disc fell into his hand. He blinked in confusion. Then, a hologram flickered to life, casting a soft blue glow in the kitchen. A familiar, towering figure appeared. I am here to announce your results, boomed the voice of All Might himself, resplendent in his golden smile. Izuku gasped, almost dropping the disc. All Might laughed heartily. Young Midoriya, he said, eyes twinkling. You have shown great bravery, cleverness, and heart. Despite obstacles, you earned points far beyond the passing grade. A counter appeared beside him, spinning dramatically. Rescue points earned, 45 combat points earned, 35 total, 80 points. Status, accepted into you. High school. Izuku's knees nearly buckled. He stared, mouth open, at the results flashing in midair. He had done it. He had actually done it. A strangled noise escaped his throat, half laugh, half sob. His mother screamed in joy and tackled him in a hug, sobbing into his hoodie. Tears welled up in his eyes as he hugged her back tightly. All Might's final words echoed in his mind. Welcome to your first step toward becoming a true hero. Later that day, the sunlight filtered through the windows of a quiet cafe. Izuku was sitting nervously at a corner booth, fidgeting with his phone. He had texted Kyoka almost the second he had finished calming his mom down. Izuku, I got in. You accepted me. Her reply had come a few minutes later. Kyoka, took you long enough, nerd. Where you at? And now, here he was. The bell over the door jingled. Kyoka walked in, hands casually in her jacket pockets, earphone jacks swaying with each step. She spotted him immediately and made her way over. Izuku scrambled to stand, almost knocking over his chair. Kyoka smirked. You really are hopeless. But her voice was warm, almost giddy. Izuku grinned sheepishly. Kyoka slid into the seat across from him. So, she said, leaning back. You're officially student now, huh? Izuku nodded, trying and failing to suppress the huge grin stretching across his face. "I still can't believe it," he said breathlessly. Kyoka's smirk softened into something gentler. "You earned it," she said simply. There was a beat of silence. Then, Kyoka reached across the table and flicked him lightly on the forehead. "Guess I'm stuck with you for another 3 years, huh?" Izuku blinked. Was it just him, or did her cheeks look a tiny bit pink? No, must have been the cafe lights. "You'll get sick of me fast," he joked. Kyoka snorted. "Already am." But her smile said otherwise. They spent the next hour just talking, about classes, about training, about what they hoped you would be like. Izuku found himself laughing more easily than he had in weeks. Kyoka's sharp wit and dry humor were a balm to his nervous heart. At one point, when he confessed how scared he was about not being good enough, Kyoka just shrugged. "You already survived a lot worse," she said, sipping her coffee. "School's nothing compared to whatever the hell you've been going through." As soon as she said this, Izuku blinked. Was she? But she didn't press. She never pressed. And he was grateful. Maybe someday he'd tell her about Ddraig, about the boosted gear, about the strange battle in the park. But not today. Today was for victories. Small ones. Precious ones. That night, the moon was high overhead, casting long silver shadows across the abandoned lot. Izuku was moving through his training drills, punches, kicks, footwork, his breath misting in the cold air. He had to stay sharp, had to get stronger. There was too much at stake now. Each strike of his fists sent small shockwaves through the air, a testament to the growing power simmering beneath his skin. The boosted gear remained dormant, for now, Ddraig letting him train without intervention. "Good," the dragon murmured in his mind. "Mastery of your body must come first. Power without control is chaos." Izuku grunted in agreement, wiping sweat from his brow. He lost himself in the rhythm. Step, pivot, strike, recoil. Hours passed unnoticed. The world faded into nothing but movement and breath. Across the street, standing atop a lamppost, hidden in the deep shadow, a figure watched. She was tall, graceful, and stunning, with flowing crimson hair that shimmered like molten fire in the moonlight. Her azure eyes gleamed with curiosity and calculation. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 folded her arms across her chest, studying the boy below. "So," she murmured to herself, a faint smile touching her lips. "You're the one who bears Ddraig's soul now." Her voice was barely a whisper, carried away by the wind. She tilted her head thoughtfully. So much raw potential. So much untapped strength. But also, so much pain hidden beneath that determined exterior. How intriguing. A lesser ghoul had already found him. It would not be the last. Others would come. Some would seek to kill. Some would seek to control. Like her, would seek to protect. Or at least, to guide. For now, she would watch. Observe. Judge. The boy known as Izuku Midoriya had stepped onto the stage of a far grander world than he yet realized. And she intended to see just how brightly he could burn. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐴 smiled, her crimson hair catching the wind like a living flame. "Show me your strength, young dragon," she whispered. And with a final glance, she vanished into the night. Early morning, the sun rose bright and early over 𝐬𝐴, Japan. A new day. A new chapter. Izuku stood in front of the mirror in his bedroom, tugging nervously at the hem of his new uniform blazer. He had tried it on 3 times already. His hair stuck up at odd angles no matter how much he combed it, his red tie felt too tight, and the polished black shoes squeaked slightly when he moved. He was a mess. A smiling, anxious mess. Inko bustled around him, dabbing at imaginary specks of dust on his uniform, sniffling every few seconds. "I can't believe it," she said for the 5th time. "My baby. the student." Izuku gave a weak laugh. He was still having trouble believing it too. Ddraig chuckled deep in his mind. A worthy beginning for a dragon, partner. Relish it. Try, Izuku muttered under his breath. Inko didn't notice. She was too busy snapping dozens of pictures on her phone. The commuter train was packed with students, workers, and early risers. Izuku stood squashed between two taller guys in business suits, his backpack clutched tightly to his chest. Somewhere near the front of the car, he spotted a familiar mop of dark purple hair. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 leaned against a pole, earphones plugged in, head bobbing slightly to some private beat. Izuku considered pushing through the crowd to say hi, but the train jolted, sending him sprawling into a wall of bodies. Maybe later. Instead, he grinned to himself. It was comforting, somehow, knowing she was here too. One less unfamiliar thing in a sea of change. The massive golden gates loomed ahead, shining brilliantly in the morning light. A crowd of nervous first-years gathered outside, buzzing with excitement and chatter. Izuku swallowed hard and stepped forward. It was finally happening. As he joined the throng, he couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of the place. Wasn't just a school. It was a fortress. An institution. A dream made real. And he, Izuku Midoriya, was a part of it now. The massive auditorium was filled wall-to-wall with students. Izuku slid into a seat near the middle, craning his neck to take everything in. A huge stage dominated the front of the room, flanked by banners bearing the 𝐻 crest. Faculty members sat in a line of chairs on the stage, some of them looking imposing, others looking unusual. A man with a scraggly scarf yawned openly. Another teacher, dressed like a space hero, waved enthusiastically at the crowd. Principal Nizu, a tiny, mouse-like creature in a suit, stepped up to the podium. "Welcome, future heroes," he chirped in a voice that was both adorable and surprising. "We are thrilled to have you here at UA. The auditorium erupted into polite applause. Izuku clapped along automatically, heart pounding. As Nizu continued with his speech, talking about expectations, responsibilities, and the honor of wearing the uniform, Izuku felt a prickling sensation at the back of his neck. He froze. Slowly, carefully, he scanned the crowd. Hundreds of students. Most chatting quietly or listening or fidgeting nervously. Normal. Totally normal. Except one figure near the back. A boy with pale silver hair and piercing golden eyes. He was staring directly at Izuku. Unblinking. Unmoving. Izuku's stomach twisted. He recognized that feeling, the subtle, wrong pressure in the air. Something unusual. Something concerning. Ddraig rumbled uneasily in his mind. "Tread carefully, partner. You are not the only one walking hidden paths here." Izuku forced himself to look away. The last thing he needed was to attract attention. Not here. Not now. After orientation, the students were divided into their homeroom classes. Izuku found himself outside a door marked 1A. He swallowed nervously. This was it. His first step. He reached for the handle. "Move, nerd," came a familiar, sneering voice. A sharp elbow knocked him aside. Bakugo Katsuki shoved past him, scowling as if the very existence of the door offended him. Izuku's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything. Not today. He had bigger things to worry about. Kyoka appeared at his side a moment later, earphones dangling. "You okay?" Izuku nodded. "Yeah, but nurse." She smirked. "Welcome to the club." Together, they stepped into Class 1A. The room was huge, with sleek desks arranged in perfect rows, and massive windows letting in tons of sunlight. Students were already milling around, claiming seats and introducing themselves. Izuku spotted a few notable figures. A tall guy with glasses, barking instructions at no one in particular. A girl with gravity-defying pink cheeks, bouncing with excitement. A boy covered in strange dark patches, whispering rapidly to himself. Kyoka slid into a seat near the back, hooking one earphone back into place. Izuku hesitated, then took the desk beside her. It felt right. Comfortable. Familiar. The teacher entered a moment later, the scraggly scarf guy from the stage. He yawned loudly. "I'm Aizawa," he said, voice flat and bored. "Your homeroom teacher. I don't care about your names unless you prove you're worth remembering." A collective shiver went through the room. Izuku sat up straighter. Aizawa dropped a pile of gym uniforms onto the desk. "Get changed. We're doing a quirk assessment test." The class exploded into confused murmuring. Izuku grinned. He liked this guy already. The afternoon was a blur of movement. Sprinting, jumping, throwing, using their quirks under timed conditions. Izuku gave it everything he had, tapping into just enough boosted gear power to enhance his reflexes without drawing attention. He placed decently in most categories. Not the best, but far from the worst. He could live with that. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 did surprisingly well too, her earphone jack quirk letting her send sonic attacks through the ground. Bakugo, of course, dominated the top ranks with his explosions. Izuku ignored him. He had his own path to walk. At the end of the test, Aizawa grunted. "You're not hopeless. That's about as high a compliment as you'll get from me." The class sagged with relief. Izuku chuckled breathlessly, wiping sweat from his forehead. He had survived his first day. Barely. That night, Izuku sat on the roof of his apartment building, staring up at the stars. His body ached from the day's tests, but it was a good ache. A reminder that he was moving forward. Growing. Becoming something more. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. A new text from 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐀𝐭𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, survived day barely. Don't die before next week, loser. Izuku smiled. He texted back. Izuku, no promises. The wind shifted. Izuku stiffened. A faint ripple of energy brushed across his senses. He turned, scanning the shadows, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling lingered. Someone, was watching. Testing. Waiting. Ddraig spoke quietly in his mind. Stay alert. The game has begun, even if they pretend otherwise. Izuku nodded to himself. He would survive. He would grow. He would protect those he cared about. No matter what challenges lurked in the dark. Above, the stars burned cold and bright. A promise. A challenge. A beginning. And Izuku Midoriya, wielder of the boosted gear, accepted it. Chapter 11. The unseen flame. The building stood against the skyline. Its cracked windows and rust-stained walls loomed over the cracked pavement and choked weeds like the broken teeth of a beast long since forgotten. Izuku Midoriya stood at the threshold, breath misting in the frigid air. The building had once been a metalworks foundry, shut down over a decade ago after an accident. It had since become a hushed rumor among delinquents and thrill-seekers. He wasn't here to chase ghost stories. He was here to train, and to test something new. You're getting reckless, partner, Ddraig's voice echoed calmly in his mind, but I approve. Solitude makes for cleaner tests. And cleaner fights. Izuku's green eyes scanned the darkness. There's something about this place, Ddraig. The air, it feels different. It carries a weight. This building remembers. Izuku's hand clenched. The familiar pulse of the boosted gear rippled up his arm, forming the gauntlet in a flash of crimson light. Emerald veins of power glowed across its surface like molten circuitry. Good, he whispered. Let's see what I can handle tonight. A shape moved atop a nearby tower. A silhouette wrapped in shadows, cloaked and still. She watched the green-haired boy through a worn spyglass, her violet eyes unblinking. A dragon's vessel. Here. She murmured, voice barely a breath. Her name was 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, Queen of the House of 𝐴𝐻𝐵. Her task, observe, not interfere. Rias had felt a pulse of power weeks ago, something potent and ancient awakening. Not a fallen, nor an angel. Something different. The boosted gear had chosen another host. And he was human. You're quite something for a human, 𝐻𝐻𝐿 whispered with an amused smile. Let's see what you're hiding beneath all that nervous charm. The foundry's interior groaned under the wind. Loose chains dangled from the ceiling like metal vines. Ash still clung to the corners of the walls. Forgotten tools lay scattered, rusted beyond recognition. Izuku moved with precision, silent steps, cautious breath. He wasn't alone. He didn't know what was watching him, but he'd learned to trust the unease curling down his spine. His gauntlet shimmered. Then the sound hit, like metal scraping against something. Something darted through the shadows. Too fast to be natural. Here we go, Izuku muttered. A creature lunged from the darkness, pale and wrong. Its limbs were too long, mouth stretched in a way that revealed something unsettling instead of teeth. Some kind of low-class spirit. Izuku guessed. No, Ddraig responded with interest. It's more a failed summon. A soul tethered to rage. Izuku didn't wait. He moved. Training turns to survival. Izuku slid under the first strike, rolled behind a steel beam, and launched himself forward with a burst of enhanced speed. Boost! The gauntlet roared. His punch slammed into the creature's chest, sending it flying into a support column. The entire structure groaned under the impact. But the creature only hissed and twisted its body upright, bones cracking in odd angles. Izuku swore. Then it charged again. Clang! Slam! The fight turned intense. Izuku ducked a WHP-like limb and countered with a boosted roundhouse. Concrete chipped beneath his feet as he launched himself into the air, flipping over the creature's back and landing behind it. His fingers clenched. Boost again. The gauntlet pulsed, raw energy surged through him. His next blow cracked the creature's jaw, sending a spray of dark energy across the floor. It screamed. The sound was unsettling, like metal being torn apart underwater. Izuku staggered, his ears ringing. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. This was more than training now. This was survival. As the creature reeled, Izuku stood still for a moment, chest heaving. You shouldn't exist, he said, voice quiet. He didn't know why he said it. But the truth of it rang in his bones. The creature was suffering. Corrupted. A mistake of some ancient pact or summoning gone wrong. But pity couldn't stay his hand. I'll end this, he whispered. The boosted gear glowed. Again. Boost. Izuku charged, dashed up the wall, using the crumbling panels as stepping stones. At the apex of his leap, he twisted in midair, gauntlet drawn back. A yell escaped from his lips as he plummeted like a comet, energy spiraling around him. The blow hit center mass. A burst of power erupted through the foundry, shaking the old structure to its core. The creature shrieked once, and was gone. Vaporized. Izuku landed hard, knees hitting the cracked floor. Silence followed. Total and complete. On the rooftop, Aquino exhaled. Not in surprise, but in satisfaction. Clean. Efficient. Precise. And his control, she smiled. Rias is going to love this one. Then she vanished, her presence slipping away into the wind. Inside the foundry, Izuku slowly sat down beside a support beam, chest rising and falling with deep breaths. His knuckles were raw, even through the gauntlet. Grime marked his arms and jaw. That wasn't a regular spirit, he murmured. No. That was summoned. Illegally. Ddraig's voice was grim. And whoever did it, left a mark. Izuku turned his eyes upward. The rafters were scorched. But something else was there too, a glowing seal burned into the ceiling. A summoning circle. Worn and cracked, but unmistakable. This is bigger than I thought. Later that night, Izuku stumbled through the door of his apartment. He cleaned his wounds in silence, locked away the boosted gear, and collapsed into his bed. His phone buzzed. Kyoka had sent a text. Kyoka, still alive, nerd. He smiled faintly. Izuku, barely. Rough night. Kyoka, don't train yourself to death. First week of school isn't even over. He laughed under his breath. If only she knew. But he'd keep her out of this. Out of the supernatural. Out of the danger. At least for now. Somewhere, in a red-lit area far from Yuzudafu, Aquino stepped forward. I observed him, she said. He fought with restraint, precision, and kindness. 'Tis different. Rias nodded. And the boosted gear. Aquino smiled. Fully awakened. Growing fast. He doesn't realize it yet, but he's already a contender. Rias's eyes gleamed. Then it's time we met, isn't it? She turned. Soon, Izuku Midoriya. Very soon. Chapter 12. The Invitation Beyond the Veil. Izuku Midoriya walked in silence beneath the glow of the orange streetlights, his breath fogging slightly in the spring chill. His mind buzzed with thoughts of his acceptance into you. Hi, even though he passed the entrance exam, both on the written test and, more notably, during the practical combat phase. Still, despite the victory, something hung heavy in his chest, the supernatural encounter he'd faced days earlier. something he hadn't yet told anyone about. Not even Kyoka. His phone vibrated. He glanced down. Kyoka, you still walking around in the dark, nerd? You're gonna give old ladies heart attacks. He chuckled softly and replied, Izuku, just clearing my head. I'll call you later. He pocketed the phone and continued, unaware that eyes were already watching him. It began with a flicker. A nearby lamppost blinked twice, then died. The next 3 along the block followed suit, one after the other, in perfect rhythm. Izuku stopped. Ddraig, yes. This is not natural. A whisper of wind carried an envelope into his path. Plain, unmarked. It landed gently at his feet. He knelt, picking it up with cautious fingers. Inside was a single black card with embossed red writing. Come. Midnight. Follow the red moon. No signature. No address. And yet he understood. Midnight, the old observatory, outside city limits. The building stood silent on the hill, weather-beaten and abandoned for nearly 20 years. Once a private observatory, it now overlooked the forested edges beyond Mizudafu. No one came here. Not even urban explorers. Except tonight. Izuku stood at the edge of the rusted gates, the card still in hand. Above, a crimson moon hung in the sky. A perfect, unnatural sphere of blue red light. This reeks of devil magic, Ddraig muttered. The gate opened on its own. Izuku stepped inside. The inside, starlit shadows. The interior was pristine. Dust didn't cling to the railings, the wooden floor didn't creak. It felt preserved, like a memory held in stasis. Candles flickered in steel sconces, lining the walls with warm, golden glow. At the center of the grand chamber, beneath the glass dome, stood a red velvet chair. And in it, a girl with long, scarlet hair. Her eyes were clear blue, sharp and calculating, yet warm with a strange curiosity. She wore a black dress embroidered with a glowing crimson sigil on her sleeve. Good evening, Izuku Midoriya, she said smoothly. You may call me Rias. Izuku blinked, his instincts on edge. How do you know my name? I've known it for a while, she replied, rising to her feet. You're quite unique, especially for a human. The boosted gear pulsed faintly on his wrist beneath his sleeve. You're not here by accident, she continued. That gauntlet on your arm, your power, it's older than you can imagine. And very much of interest to certain parties. Izuku stiffened. You've been watching me. Only observing, Rias said gently. You've drawn attention, Midoriya. The kind that's better met with open eyes than a blindfld. I offer clarity. He hesitated. What are you? She smiled faintly. A devil. Not the kind from bedtime stories. And I'm not your enemy. Izuku took a breath, eyes narrowing. Then why bring me here? To give you a choice, she said. Knowledge or ignorance. You'll soon find yourself caught in a storm you don't yet understand. But you don't have to face it alone. She extended a small folded paper. When you're ready, come find me. Not as an enemy. Not as a recruiter. But as someone who can explain what you truly are beginning to carry. He stared at it. Then slowly took it. Departure, no answers. Only doors. He left the observatory in silence, the strange invitation heavy in his pocket. Ddraig. She told no lies. She is of the Gremory bloodline. Royal. Dangerous. And yet, she fears something. Izuku looked back one last time at the building silhouetted beneath the red moon. He didn't have answers yet. But the doors had opened. And whatever was coming closer. Late evening, Midoriya residence. Living room. The living room was quiet save for the soft murmur of the television playing a muted weather report. Izuku sat cross-legged on the floor, still wearing his training gear, a towel draped around his shoulders. Sweat clung to his brow, and his breathing was steady but tired. A cup of tea rested on the table in front of him, courtesy of his mother, Inko, who was bustling in the kitchen with quiet pride. Training again this late, she called out gently. Izuku gave a sheepish grin. I wanted to keep sharp. Yue's going to be intense. Inko peeked into the room, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. Her eyes lingered on her son longer than usual, as though she could sense the undercurrents swirling around him. "You've grown stronger. But don't forget to rest too." "I won't," he promised. His eyes drifted to the window. The night was deep and clear, but a strange stillness loomed beyond the glass, like the city itself was holding its breath. Next day, forest clearing outside 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴, the sun hung low as Izuku and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stood at opposite ends of a secluded clearing. Fallen leaves crunched underfoot. A pair of duffel bags rested nearby, filled with training equipment. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 stretched out her arms and rolled her neck. "So, what's today's weird plan?" Izuku smiled. "Simple agility drills. Then reactive sparring. I want to test coordination against unpredictability." She quirked a brow. "Sounds like an excuse to get kicked." "Only a little." Their training began in earnest, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 lashing out with precise jabs using her jacks, while Izuku weaved through them with controlled bursts of strength and speed. They had done this routine for weeks now, but each time, Izuku refined something: faster reflexes, tighter steps, smarter counters. 𝐬𝐻 kept up easily. "You're pulling your punches." "I'm testing patterns." "You adapt too fast for brute force." She smirked. "So you're saying I'm better than you?" "I'm saying you're the perfect partner," he replied sincerely. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨 blinked, hiding a blush with a sharp roundhouse that he barely dodged. By the time the sun dipped below the trees, they were both breathing, smiling, bruised, and satisfied. Later that night, Izuku sat on his bed, a small stack of notebooks beside him, each filled with observations, some on quirks, others on training, and one with growing notes about the supernatural. He stared at the folded paper 𝐬𝐻 had given him, still unopened. Ddraig's presence stirred faintly within the gauntlet, silent but attentive. "You haven't asked about her." "I haven't decided if I want to know yet." "Curious." Most would leap at the offer of forbidden knowledge. "I've seen what power can do to people. I'd rather understand myself before I understand others." Ddraig was quiet for a long time before replying. "A wise mindset, rare in one so young." Izuku closed the notebook, mind shifting. There was something beneath his awareness, a thread tugging at the edges of perception. Like something, or someone, was watching again. Elsewhere, beneath a half-collapsed torii gate and overgrown trees, a shrine lay forgotten by time. Lanterns lit themselves in flickering crimson. 𝐬𝐻 stepped forward from the shadows, her expression conflicted. Beside her stood a blonde-haired young man in a dark uniform, his stance respectful, his eyes sharp. 𝐻𝐿. "He hasn't opened it yet," 𝐀𝐮𝐵 said. "He will," 𝐬𝐻 replied, though her tone lacked the conviction it once had. "He's too intelligent to remain blind. Let him come to us of his own will." 𝐀𝐮𝐵 tilted his head slightly. "You seem uncertain." 𝐬𝐻 looked away, toward the distant stars. "He reminds me of someone. Someone who changed everything without realizing it." "What of the others?" She sighed. "The other factions will act soon. And the Red Dragon Emperor cannot remain neutral forever." 𝐀𝐮𝐵 nodded silently, though concern flickered in his gaze. The game was already underway, and Izuku Midoriya stood unknowingly at its center. Chapter 13, Trial by Combat. The atmosphere in 𝐒𝐮𝐻 Class 1A was thick with anticipation. Today marked the beginning of combat training, the first real test of the students' capabilities. Everyone buzzed with a mixture of excitement and anxiety, stealing glances at the clock. Izuku Midoriya sat in the second row, hood pulled over his head, dark-toned hero costume casting him in muted colors. His suit was practical, fingerless gloves reinforced for grip, steel-plated combat boots for stability and impact, a lightweight hoodie concealing his hair, and a matte black face mask covering the lower half of his face. It gave him an air of mystery. Unlike the flashier outfits around him, Izuku's was grounded and tactical. Only 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, seated behind him, gave his gear an approving nod, knowing he wasn't dressing to impress, he was dressing to fight. "Nice touch," she whispered. "You look like a walking ghost." He didn't answer aloud but gave a small nod. Inside, his thoughts were far more turbulent. "You're quiet," Ddraig said within Izuku's mind. "I need to focus." And yet you let that Bakugo boy walk around unchecked. Will you keep avoiding him? Izuku's mental tone was calm but edged. I won't avoid him. Not anymore. I just won't stoop to his level. That's not what I meant. You're not the same powerless boy he remembers. When the time comes, you'll need to show him that. Power breeds attention and enemies. I know. Then say it. Izuku exhaled through his nose in the real world. In his mind, boost. A subtle pulse radiated from the gauntlet beneath his glove. Strength sharpened. His reflexes heightened. Controlled. Balanced. A gust of wind nearly tore the doors off the hinges as the symbol of peace burst into the classroom in his full form. I am here. All Might declared, beaming. And today, you will be learning what it means to fight, hero against villain. He gestured grandly to the monitor showing randomized pairings. Heroes, Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka. Villains, Katsuki Bakugo and Tenya Ida. Izuku's jaw tightened slightly behind his mask. Ochako nudged him with a nervous smile. Hey, team-up time. Think we'll be okay? He nodded. Stick to the plan. I'll deal with Bakugo. You handle the objective. The interior of the mock office building was dimly lit. Echoes traveled across the metal floor as Izuku and Ochako moved carefully through the corridors. Midoriya, Ochako whispered, you've changed a lot since the entrance exam. It's like you flipped SW. I just see things clearer now, he said, voice low and measured. A thunderous blast shook the floor. Bakugo. Bakugo emerged like a missile, explosions flaring at his palms. I knew it. They'd pair us. I'm gonna blow that smug mask off your face, Deku. Izuku didn't rise to the bait. Bakugo lunged. Izuku slid under the first explosion, catching Bakugo's wrist and redirecting the blast upward. He responded with a sharp boost of strength, just enough to knock Bakugo off balance and shove him into a wall. Still underestimating me, Katsuki? Izuku said flatly, using his full name. Bakugo's face twisted. Don't call me that, nerd. He's wild, Ddraig commented. But predictable. Izuku activated another boost, still subtle within the bounds of normal strength. He didn't need to reveal Ddraig yet. Not for him. Bakugo came back swinging, explosion after explosion painting the hall in fire. Izuku dodged, ducked, and landed precise counters. Bakugo's rage made him sloppy. Izuku's control made him unstoppable. Elsewhere, Ochako zipped through a stairwell, using her quirk on her boots and walls to ascend quickly. Ida waited near the mock bomb, standing guard with mechanical precision. I can't let you pass, he shouted. Ochako smiled. Then let's dance, engine boy. Izuku heard the call in his earpiece. Ochako was near the bomb. Bakugo charged one last time, aiming a blast at point blank. Izuku whispered, boost. He caught Bakugo's wrist mid-blast and twisted, throwing him down hard. I'm not the same kid, he said. And you're not better because you yell louder. He turned and sprinted, meeting Ochako just as she triggered the capture. All Might, her voice rang. Victory, heroes. The class murmured in shock as Izuku removed his mask, face dripping with sweat but eyes focused. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. All Might clapped once. A tactical display of control and adaptation. Impressive work, Midoriya. Bakugo said nothing, seething in the corner. Kyoka smiled from the back row. She knew what had really happened. And Izuku. He kept the truth and the boosted gear, hidden for now. But the echoes of his strength were just beginning to stir. Chapter 14. The night in the sand. The sun was slipping below the edge of the horizon, casting gold and crimson hues across the ocean that lapped at Dagobah Beach. The waves whispered against the shore, rhythmic and calm, unlike the whirlwind of thoughts inside Izuku Midoriya's mind. Wearing his dark hoodie and long joggers, Izuku jogged along the edge of the sand, boots thudding in steady pace against the gritty surface. The trial battle with Bakugo and Ida still played on repeat in his head, and so did the echo of All Might's voice praising him. But louder still was the faint, feminine voice that haunted his thoughts. You'll soon find yourself caught in a storm you don't yet understand. But you don't have to face it alone. 𝐴𝐻 Gremory. He hadn't gone to the address she provided, not yet. But the weight of the letter remained in the inner pocket of his hoodie, folded with care, pressed close to his heart. Every step he took on the sand was less about exercise now, and more about running from decisions. "You've been quiet, Ddraig," he muttered under his breath. "Because you're thinking loud enough for the both of us," the dragon replied from within. "You've crossed a threshold, partner. Power attracts power, and war breeds questions you're not ready for." Izuku slowed to a stop, hands on his hips, breathing hard. He turned toward the sea, letting the ocean wind push back his hood slightly. He stared into the horizon, as if hoping it would show him some clarity. "Do you think I can trust her, 𝐬𝐬𝐴? She hasn't harmed you. But she's of the 𝐴 clan. They don't move without purpose. Her night watches you even now." Izuku tensed. He turned slightly. Footsteps. Measured. Graceful. Not trying to hide. A tall figure in a slim school blazer emerged from behind a cluster of ruined concrete. Blonde hair. Sharp eyes. Calm demeanor. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. The knight of 𝐬𝐻 Midoriya Izuku, the boy said politely, offering a calm nod. "Forgive the intrusion." Izuku straightened, gaze wary, every muscle coiled for action. "You've been following me." 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 didn't flinch. "Observing. Not following. My Messier asked that I ensure you weren't targeted again by the same supernatural forces you fought before." Izuku folded his arms. "You could have just said hello the first time." A faint smile touched 𝐀𝐮𝐵's lips. "That would have made it harder to see who you really are when you're unguarded." Izuku didn't respond. He simply stared, silent. 𝐀𝐮𝐵's expression softened. "She means no harm, you know, 𝐬𝐻. "That's not the same as meaning good," Izuku replied evenly. "Tell me something. Why her? Why now?" 𝐀𝐮𝐵 looked toward the ocean. "Because war is coming. And in wars between devils, dragons, and angels, there are very few humans who survive untouched. Are not like most humans. The boosted gear chose you." Izuku's gaze hardened. "That doesn't mean I chose her." 𝐀𝐮𝐵 nodded slowly, respectfully. "And she respects that. But she's giving you time, something the others might not." There was silence between them, only the waves and wind offering sound. Then 𝐀𝐮𝐵 took a step back. "You'll make your own decision, Midoriya, but will be nearby when the supernatural calls again." He turned, walking off with the same calm stride he arrived with, fading into the deepening dusk. Izuku stood alone again. The sea rolled on, and the folded invitation pressed a little heavier against his heart. The room was dimly lit, moonlight slipping between the curtains and casting pale blue light across Izuku's notes, notebooks, and the scattered sketches of hero suits and quirk analysis. But those had all been pushed to the side. Today wasn't about quirks. Izuku sat on the floor, back against the bed, hands resting in his lap. His hoodie was thrown on the chair, and the boosted gear, though mostly dormant, was visible in its semi-activated form, a faint green jewel embedded on the back of his glove, shimmering with otherworldly light. He stared at it in silence for a while. Then he spoke. "Ddraig." The familiar rumble echoed in his mind. "Yes, partner." Izuku drew in a breath. "I need to know more. About this gear. About what it can do, what it will do to me. You keep talking about its power, but you're holding back. I can tell." Silence stretched for a second longer than Izuku liked. Then Ddraig finally answered. "You're right. I have been. Because knowledge of power can be just as dangerous as the power itself. But you've proven that you won't abuse it. You deserve to know now." Izuku leaned forward, attentive. "What you wield, Izuku Midoriya, is the boosted gear, one of the 13 Longinus. Sacred gears of such immense potential that they can kill even gods." Izuku's breath caught, but he said nothing. "More than that, your boosted gear houses me, Ddraig, the Red Dragon Emperor. I grant you the power of doubling your strength every 10 seconds through the command boost. That's what you've tapped into so far. But there's more. Much more." Izuku felt the jewel pulse. That more is the balance breaker. The manifestation of a sacred gear's true potential. It changes the battlefield, partner. It's a transformation, a merging of soul, power, and purpose. When activated, your armor, my armor, fully encases you. The scale mail of the Red Dragon Emperor becomes your second skin. Izuku whispered, eyes wide. A full armor. Yes. But it's not just physical. The balance breaker is a state of being. It requires immense emotional trigger, resolve, desperation, or sometimes pain. And once activated, it rewrites the rules of the fight. You don't just boost, you ascend. Izuku gritted his teeth. Then why haven't I accessed it yet? Because you are human. Those 3 words hit hard. Unlike devils, angels, or fallen angels, beings who are born into the supernatural, you, Izuku, are purely human. No magic circuits. No demonic lineage. No divine body. This gear chose you, and it fights with you. But unlocking the balance breaker as a human is exponentially harder. You must bridge the gap through your will alone. Izuku looked down at the glowing gem. That's a challenge. Yes. One very few humans have ever overcome. But if anyone can, I believe it's you. Izuku clenched his fist. He remembered Bakugo's determination, Ida's speed, Chako's trust, Kyoka's understanding, All Might's smile, Rias's eyes. Then I'll do it. I'll reach that point, no matter what. The gem pulsed again, like a heartbeat. Stronger this time. But know this, partner, unlocking Balance Breaker will change you. Your body, your soul, even your relationships with the world around you. The supernatural will see you as more than human. You will become something else. Izuku didn't flinch. He looked to his notes, then to the stars beyond the window. If I have to lose who I was to become the hero I want to be, then so be it. I'll become stronger. Strong enough to carry both worlds. The boosted gear shimmered with pride. And far off in the distance, in a place no human eye could see, something stirred. Watching. Waiting. The school gates of loomed before Izuku Midoriya once more, gleaming beneath the early morning sun. Birds chirped across the skyline, and students from across Class 1A streamed toward the main building, chatting excitedly. The intensity of the battle training exercise with All Might just days ago still lingered in the air. Everyone was buzzing with newfound confidence, or reflecting on their experiences. But for Izuku Midoriya, whose heart beat beneath both nervousness and excitement, each step into you felt heavier than it should. The lingering memory of the boosted gear's crimson glow on his wrist and Rias Gremry's distant, observing gaze filled his thoughts like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I'm back to school. Again. But things aren't the same anymore, he thought. The halls were bright and warm, and as he slipped into the classroom with his usual low profile, he tried to blend in near the back. Kyoka gave him a small wave as he passed. He returned it with a nod. Morning, she said, scooting over to give him space. Morning, he muttered. His voice was calm but his eyes scanned the room. Just before the bell rang, Aizawa-sensei walked in, sleeping bag slung over his shoulder and looking more tired than usual. He barely looked awake, and yet the moment he stepped to the podium, the class fell silent. Settle down, he drawled. I'm sure you're all still recovering from the combat exercise. But we're moving forward. He dropped the bag to the floor and unrolled a scroll. Today, you'll vote on your class representative. And no, he added, already anticipating questions, this isn't just symbolic. Leadership among heroes is just as vital as power. In fact, it's harder. The class murmured. Wait, we're voting for real. Kaminari blinked. This early in the semester. Siro chimed in. Mina raised her hand enthusiastically. Can we nominate ourselves? Yes, Aizawa said with a yawn, pulling out his sleeping bag. You have 5 minutes. Decide. Izuku stared at his desk, fingers curled into a loose fist. He hadn't even thought about this. Being a leader, that was Bakugo's thing. Or Ida's. Not him. You would make a fine king, Ddraig's voice echoed in his mind, smooth and ancient. King. Izuku thought. I'm not trying to lead anyone. I'm just trying to stay under the radar. Leadership does not come to those who seek it for glory. It falls to those who carry power responsibly. He frowned. I just got this power. I don't even understand it yet. And yet your resolve burns stronger than many who have held the boosted gear. His lips pressed into a line. He didn't want this kind of attention. If people started watching him too closely, someone might notice the gauntlet. Someone besides Kyoka. All right. Kirishima's voice cut through his thoughts. Let's do this. I'm throwing my name in. I'll nominate myself too. Mina beamed. I believe I am well suited for the role, Ida said, raising his hand like a soldier reporting for duty. Several others laughed, some cheered, but when Ida spoke, there was a strange kind of authority in his voice that made people take notice. Kyoka leaned in. You're not putting your name in. Izuku shook his head. I'm not cut out for this. Could have fooled me, she said, smirking. You gave Bakugo a reality check during the combat training. That took guts. Still not the same as leading a class, he mumbled. Voting went quick. Everyone scribbled on paper, and Yaoyorozu tallied the results with her calm demeanor. Looks like Ida and Midoriya tied, she announced after a moment. Izuku blinked. Wait, what? Everyone turned toward him. You got a few votes, Kaminari said. Don't be surprised. You've got presence, dude. He hadn't even realized a few had voted for him. I demand a recount. Ida blurted, then blushed. I mean we should have a runoff vote, yes. No need, Izuku said quickly, standing. Ida should take it. I didn't ask for the votes, and honestly, I think he'll do better. A few people murmured in agreement, and Aizawa grunted from his bag. Fine, the teacher said. Ida's president. Yaoyorozu's vice president. Move on. When lunch arrived, Izuku sat beneath a tree in the courtyard, quietly chewing through his sandwich. Kyoka plopped beside him. You know you could have done it, right? She asked. He shrugged. Leadership means visibility. And I'm trying to avoid that for now. Because of the gauntlet. He nodded. People get curious. Curiosity becomes questions. Questions become danger. She didn't argue. I don't want to be reckless, he continued. But I also don't want to pretend I'm just another kid. I know too much now. Kyoka looked out toward the sky. If you ever need someone to help balance that weight, you've got me. He smiled faintly. Inside, Ddraig's voice stirred again. You dodged the crown today, but destiny rarely asks, it demands. Izuku clenched his fist over his lunch tray. Then I'll be ready when it comes. The cafeteria still buzzed with the usual noise of students enjoying their lunches. Laughter rang out in groups, trays clattered, and energy ran high as expected of a hero training school. Izuku Midoriya, who decided to take more food thanks to his metabolism, sat at the far edge of the room, tucked in a quieter corner with a half-eaten lunch before him. He absent-mindedly pushed rice across his tray, deep in thought. Ddraig's voice echoed within his mind, smooth and composed as always. You seem distracted, partner. Your thoughts are racing again. Izuku sighed mentally. I can't help it. Ever since the offer from Rias and the presence of her knight, it's like the air around me's changed. Like I'm walking into something I can't fully see yet. You're not wrong. There are shadows moving in your periphery, and they're not all from this school or the devils. Before Izuku could reflect further, a sudden alarm blared through the entire building. Emergency lockdown protocol initiated. Unauthorized breach detected. Students jolted in surprise. The red warning lights pulsed across the ceiling, and the metal shutters began sliding down around the cafeteria. A loud mechanical clank sounded in the distance. Izuku stood, muscles tightening beneath his hoodie. Around him, students scrambled in panic. Instinct, Ddraig rumbled. You feel it too, don't you? Something's off. This isn't a drill. He was already moving. Izuku sprinted through the empty corridors, boosted lightly with his inner strength. Not enough to activate the gear visibly, but just enough to move faster than normal. The halls were eerily silent, save for the echo of his boots and the distant alarm. He reached the western admin sector, normally off-limits to students. But the door was ajar. Heart-thudding, Izuku stepped through. Papers rustled. His eyes zeroed in on a shadowy figure dressed in a black coat, their face obscured beneath a strange half-mask and hood. They rifled through secured filing cabinets, laser-precision gloved fingers moving between folders. Izuku's foot hit a creaking floorboard. The figure snapped around. For a brief second, they locked eyes. The intruder's gaze was sharp, too calm for someone caught mid-action. "Who?" Izuku's voice barely escaped before a crackle of energy surged around the figure. A dark violet portal flared open behind them. Without a word, the figure backstepped into the swirl of energy and vanished. Izuku lunged, but the portal shut like a steel trap, leaving behind only silence and the distant clanging of reactivating security. Breathing hard, Izuku turned toward the mess the intruder left behind. Dozens of files had been ripped open. Pages fluttered to the floor. Most were administrative records, class assignments, simulation logs, mundane information. But one folder was still open on the desk. Its heading, USJ, Unforeseen Simulation Joint, Tactical Layout, Emergency Protocols, Staff Assignment Logs. Izuku's BLD ran cold. He sat at the edge of the school's rooftop, file page still in his hoodie pocket. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows. USJ? It hasn't even happened yet. But whoever that was, they're planning something. Ddraig's voice was lower now, edged with warning. You're being targeted. Your power, your presence, it's stirring the currents of both the natural and supernatural worlds. Izuku clenched his fist. Then I'll face it head-on. His eyes glinted with determination, dragon-like slits glowing faintly as the sun fell behind the horizon. The sun had barely crested the horizon when Izuku Midoriya's boots pressed into the grainy sands of Dagobah Beach. Waves whispered as they touched the shore, and the soft cries of gulls echoed in the distance. The wind rolled past, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. This was where he trained, where no one could see him, where no one could hear him, where he could be himself. He took a stance, tightened his fists. Boost! A faint red glow traced across his left arm as the dragon-shaped gauntlet of the boosted gear emerged. The scales gleamed in the morning light, humming with quiet power. First, one step at a time. He threw a jab, then another. Each strike was faster, sharper. He pivoted on his heel, dropped low, and unleashed a sweeping hook into the air. Sand exploded underfoot with the force of his movement. Boost! Then the pulse. Boost! He could feel it now, his bones singing, his BLD surging. Boost! Quite the sight. Izuku froze. From the rocks bordering the edge of the beach, a lone figure emerged. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐴, clad in the usual 𝐾𝐻 Academy uniform, the breeze fluttering the edges of his coat. Izuku narrowed his eyes and deactivated the gear in a flicker of fading light. You again. 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐴 raised his hands in a gesture of peace. Not here to fight. Merely to observe. You train hard. Izuku brushed the sweat from his brow. Some people don't have the luxury of training in safety. And I didn't ask for an audience. Forgive me. Force of habit. 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐴 stepped closer, keeping his distance respectful. I'm not surprised. The Red Dragon Emperor is known for tenacity. Don't call me that, Izuku said sharply, turning his back and grabbing a water bottle from his bag. I'm not like the others who had this thing. No, you're still fully human, 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐴 said softly, which makes your mastery of the boosted gear all the more fascinating. And concerning. Izuku stared out over the water. You're not just here to watch me punch air, are you? No, 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐴 admitted, stepping forward. Rias has been patient. She hasn't pushed. But she wonders if you're still considering her invitation. There was a long silence. She sent you? Izuku asked without turning. No. I came on my own. I see something in you. A storm brewing maybe. You're holding it back. But for how long? Izuku finally turned. His dragon-like eyes flared just faintly. I don't trust people who work in the shadows. I don't like being spied on. And I don't know what she wants from me. She wants to help you. Izuku scoffed. People say that when they want something in return. 𝐾𝐮𝐬𝐴 nodded. That's fair. But we both know the supernatural doesn't wait for permission. You've already stepped into its world, whether you like it or not. He took a breath, looking out at the sea. I understand your caution. But the time will come, Midoriya, when standing alone won't be enough. The breeze tugged at Izuku's hoodie. His fists clenched slowly at his sides. I haven't said no, he muttered. Kiba smiled faintly. That's all she needs to hear. And with that, the knight turned, walking back toward the city, leaving only footprints behind in the sand. Izuku stood still for a moment longer. Ddraig, you heard him. I did. And he's not wrong. The more you use me, the more the veil between worlds thins. Eventually, you'll have to choose a side. Izuku gazed down at his left hand, where the power of a dragon slept. Then I'll make sure I choose it on my own terms. Morning light bathed you. High in a warm glow as the students of Class 1A bustled with excitement. Today was a special day. Though it was part of their curriculum, it wasn't every day they were taken to a specialized facility. Today was the day of their first rescue training session, and their destination was none other than the unforeseen simulation joint, or UA. Izuku Midoriya sat near the window, eyes half-lidded as the bus rumbled steadily down the highway. He wore his dark-toned hero costume with the lightweight hoodie which helped with concealing his hair pulled back along with a matte black face mask that wasn't covering the lower half of his face, the red dragon's weight quietly humming beneath his arm in the form of the boosted gear, unseen by all. As the bus ride continued, the rest of the class filled the space with lively chatter. Izuku didn't mind. For once, things felt normal. Hey, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said, sliding into the seat beside him, her earphone jacks twitching lazily. You've been spacing out again. Izuku blinked. Sorry. Just thinking about what kind of exercises we'll be doing. You're way too serious sometimes. She nudged him lightly. Loosen up. It's a rescue class, not a war zone. Not a war zone. Ddraig stirred quietly in the back of his mind. The irony, partner. You may need more than your training today. He didn't respond, but his grip tightened slightly on the strap of his bag. Across from them, Tsuyu leaned forward slightly. Midoriya-chan, I've been wondering for a while now, what kind of quirk do you have? That simple question caused the rest of the bus to go quiet. Eyes turned. Even Bakugo raised an eyebrow from further back. 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 gave Izuku a side glance. His smile was nervous. It's just a strength-based quirk, he said, scratching his cheek. Kinda like enhanced physicality. Like super strength? Kirishima asked, leaning in. Yeah, sorta, Izuku nodded. Not flashy or anything. But helpful. 𝐀𝐭𝐽𝐴 scoffed softly but didn't contradict him. Helpful, she muttered. Right. No one pressed further. Bakugo scowled but said nothing, clearly not convinced. The tension faded, replaced by renewed conversation about the kinds of training they'd be doing. The bus finally arrived at the 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴, a massive dome-shaped facility that loomed like a gleaming fortress in the sunlight. The students disembarked, marveling at the building's sheer scale. 13, the space-themed pro-hero, stood waiting at the entrance. Clad in her iconic costume, she raised a hand in greeting. Welcome to the unforeseen simulation joint, students. The class responded with awe and curiosity as they stepped inside. The interior opened up into a massive artificial environment. Mountains, lakes, ruins, fire zones, and more. It looked like an amusement park designed for training. 13 began to explain. This facility was built to simulate various rescue scenarios, landslides, floods, structural collapse, fires, you name it. You'll be practicing rescue maneuvers, strategies, and teamwork. This is not combat training. Izuku stood quietly near 𝐀𝐭𝐽𝐴, taking it all in. For a moment, everything seemed normal. He almost believed it. Then the lights flickered. The atmosphere shifted. A distortion of shadows and light flickered at the center plaza near the fountain. And from that vortex of black mist, they emerged. Villains. Dozens of them. Shigaraki Tamura stepped out of the portal, hands twitching. Beside him stood a hulking figure wrapped in muscle, the Nomu. And the one who brought them, Kurogiri. The class froze. Aizawa stepped forward immediately, his scarf snapping to life. Stay back. 13, protect the students. Izuku narrowed his eyes, the boosted gear pulsing faintly. It's time, partner, Ddraig's voice growled in his mind. Prepare yourself. Izuku clenched his fists. Boost. The air inside the unforeseen simulation joint had turned heavy, charged with a tension that clung to the skin. The students of Class 1A stood frozen, their eyes locked on the swirling vortex of black mist that had brought the villains now spreading across the central plaza. Shigaraki's voice cut through the silence, muttering about heroes and all might. Beside him, the Nomu loomed, its beaked maw glistening under the flickering lights. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 hovered nearby, his yellow eyes glowing faintly in the haze. Izuku's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a drumroll of instinct and dread. He stood near the back of the group, his dark-toned hero costume blending into the shadows of the USJ's entrance. The lightweight hoodie concealed his wild green hair, and the matte black face mask hung loosely around his neck, leaving his face exposed. Beneath his sleeve, the boosted gear thrummed faintly, a low pulse that only he could feel. Ddraig stirred in his mind, his voice a low growl. This is no training exercise, partner. You feel it, don't you? Izuku didn't respond. His eyes darted across the scene, taking in the villains' numbers, dozens of them, each one radiating hostility. Aizawa had already leaped into action, his scarf snapping as he engaged the first wave of villains. His quirk, Erasure, nullified their powers with every glance, but there were too many. Stay back. Aizawa barked, his voice steady despite the odds. 13, get the students out of here. 13, the space-themed pro-hero, gestured toward the exit, her voice calm but urgent. Everyone follow me. We need to evacuate now. The class moved, but the black mist surged forward, coalescing into 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's form. His voice was smooth, almost polite as he blocked their path. I'm afraid I cannot allow that. You will remain here. Panic erupted. Students shouted, some stepping back, others readying their quirks. Izuku's fists clenched, his mind racing. He could feel the boosted gear begging to be unleashed, its power coiling in his arm like a caged beast. The word echoed in his thoughts, a temptation to double his strength, to unleash the dragon's might. But he hesitated. Revealing the boosted gear here, in front of his classmates, would mean exposing a power that wasn't a quirk, a power tied to a world he wasn't ready to share. You can't hide forever, Ddraig rumbled. Not from this. Before Izuku could decide, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's mist expanded, swallowing the class in a disorienting wave. The world twisted, and suddenly, Izuku was no longer at the entrance. He landed HRD on a rocky outcrop in the landslide zone, the ground uneven beneath his boots. Kyoka and Momo hit the ground nearby, both stumbling but quick to recover. Midoriya. Kyoka called, her earphone jacks twitching as she scanned their surroundings. You okay? Yeah, Izuku said, his voice tight. He pulled himself to his feet, his eyes sweeping the area. The landslide zone was a maze of jagged cliffs and loose gravel, now crawling with villains. He counted at least 6 approaching, their weapons glinting in the dim light. Momo's face was pale but focused as she created a staff from her arm. We're cut off from the others. We need to regroup or hold them off until help arrives. Kyoka nodded, plugging her jacks into the ground. I can hear more coming, maybe 10 total. They're trying to surround us. Izuku's mind whirled. He could fight. He wanted to fight. The boosted gear could level these villains in seconds, but using it would mean questions. Questions he wasn't ready to answer. His classmates thought he had a strength-based quirk, a lie he'd carefully maintained. If he unleashed the dragon's power, the truth would unravel. But if he didn't? A villain lunged, aiming at Momo. Izuku moved without thinking, tackling her out of the way. The energy blast scorched the ground where she'd stood, leaving a mark. Stay sharp. Izuku shouted, rolling to his feet. His body moved on instinct, honed by months of training. He dodged a pipe swung at his head, grabbing the attacker's wrist and twisting it until the weapon clattered to the ground. A swift kick sent the villain sprawling. Kyoka's sound waves blasted another thug back, her amplifiers vibrating with power. Nice move, Midoriya. But we're outnumbered. Momo created a shield, blocking a barrage of thrown objects. We need a plan. Can you do that super strength thing now? Izuku gritted his teeth. Super strength. If only it were that simple. He could push his body to its limits, but it wouldn't be enough against this many. Not without breaking himself. Boost, Ddraig urged. One word and you end this. No, Izuku muttered under his breath, dodging another attack. He couldn't risk it. Not yet. The villains closed in, their numbers growing as more emerged from the shadows. Izuku fought with everything he had, punches, kicks, grapples, relying on his training and sheer willpower. Momo and Kyoka held their own, but fatigue was setting in. Momo's quirk drained her stamina, and Kyoka's sound waves couldn't hit every target at once. A massive villain charged, his fists raised. Izuku shoved Kyoka out of the way, taking the hit himself. Pain exploded in his side as he skidded across the ground. He gasped, forcing himself to stand. Midoriya! Momo shouted, creating a net to trap the giant villain. You can't keep taking hits like that. I'm fine, Izuku lied, his breath ragged. A cut on his forehead stung his eyes. The villains weren't stopping. They were relentless, coordinated, and far too many. You're not fine, Ddraig said. You're human, not invincible. Use me, or you'll be in trouble. Izuku's vision blurred, not from injury but from the weight of the choice. He could feel it, the moment when standing alone wouldn't be enough. His classmates were fighting, risking their lives. If he held back now, people could be in danger. But if he used the boosted gear, everything would change. His life at 𝐻𝐿, his friendships, his dream of being a hero, it could all unravel. The supernatural world would claim him. He'd resisted, determined to carve his own path. But now, a scream snapped him back to reality. Kyoka was pinned by a villain, and Momo was cornered, her quirk slowing as her energy waned. The giant villain broke free of the net, charging toward them. Izuku's heart stopped. Time slowed. The boosted gear burned in his arm, its power screaming to be unleashed. Choose, partner, Ddraig said. Save them or save your secret. Izuku's eyes hardened. He tore the sleeve from his left arm, revealing the red gauntlet that shimmered into existence. The dragon's scales gleamed, its emerald gem pulsing with power. Boost! The word ripped from his throat, and a surge of energy flooded his body. His muscles tightened, his senses sharpened, and the world seemed to slow further. The villains froze, startled by the sudden aura radiating from him. Midoriya! Kyoka gasped, her voice strained as she struggled against her captor. Izuku didn't answer. He moved, faster than he ever had before. His fist connected with the villain's face, sending him crashing through a boulder. The impact echoed. He spun, grabbing the giant villain's arm and hurling him into another group of thugs, their bodies collapsing in a heap. Boost! The power doubled again, his body thrumming with raw energy. He felt invincible, unstoppable, but he knew the cost. Every use of the boosted gear pushed him closer to a breaking point, physically and otherwise. He couldn't keep this up forever. Momo stared, wide-eyed as she caught her breath. What is that? No time to explain, Izuku said, his voice low. Get to safety. I'll hold them off. Kyoka scrambled to her feet, her jacks twitching. You're not doing this alone. But before they could argue, a new portal opened. More villains poured out, their eyes locked on Izuku. The air grew colder, heavier. Shigaraki's voice carried across the zone, his tone gleeful. Well, what's this? A new player. Izuku's BLD ran cold. Shigaraki stood nearby, the villain's red eyes gleaming with interest. You're not all might, Shigaraki said, tilting his head. But you're interesting. Let's see how you handle this. The 𝐻𝐿 charged, its speed unnatural for its size. Izuku barely had time to react. He dove to the side, the ground shaking where the creature landed. Its blank eyes locked onto him, and it lunged again. Boost! Izuku met the 𝐻𝐿's fist with his own, the impact sending shockwaves through the area. Pain surged through his arm, but he held his ground. The boosted gear's power was immense, but the 𝐻𝐿 was a formidable opponent. Each blow felt like a heavy weight, and Izuku's body protested. You can't win this alone, Ddraig warned. Not without going further. Izuku understood what he meant. The balance breaker, the next level of the boosted gear's power, could turn the tide. But it would drain him and put him at great risk. He wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, he fought strategically. He used the terrain, dodging between rocks and luring the Nomu into tight spaces where its size was a disadvantage. He landed blows when he could, each one amplified by the gear's boosts. But the Nomu was relentless, its wounds healing almost instantly. Momo and 𝐀𝐭𝐽 joined the fight, Momo creating barriers and 𝐀𝐭𝐽 disrupting the villains with sonic blasts. Together, they held their ground, but it wasn't enough. The other villains were closing in, and Shigaraki's laughter echoed ominously. Izuku's mind raced. He had to make a choice. Keep fighting and risk everything, or retreat and hope for backup. But retreat wasn't an option. Not with his classmates in danger. Not with Aizawa fighting alone against the villains. Not with the USJ filled with enemies. "You've already chosen," Ddraig said, his voice almost proud. "Now see it through." Izuku took a deep breath, planting his feet. The boosted gear glowed brighter, its power surging to new heights. Boost? The villains hesitated, sensing the shift. Shigaraki's grin widened, his voice filled with excitement. "Oh, I like this. Let's see how much you can take." The Nomu roared, charging again. Izuku met it head-on, his fist glowing with energy. The clash shook the ground, and for a moment, Izuku felt like he could win. Like he could protect everyone. But deep down he knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The supernatural world had found him, and there was no going back. As the battle raged, Izuku Midoriya stood at the crossroads of his destiny, the boosted gear blazing on his arm, his heart torn between the hero he wanted to be and the power he could wield. The air in the landslide zone of the unforeseen simulation joint crackled with tension, the ground trembling beneath the force of Izuku Midoriya's clash with the Nomu. Each blow he landed, amplified by the boosted gear's relentless calls, sent shockwaves through the rocky terrain, scattering debris. The Nomu, a hulking creature of raw power, absorbed every hit, its regenerative abilities closing its wounds almost as fast as Izuku could inflict them. His arm burned with the strain, the red dragon gauntlet glowing fiercely on his left arm, its emerald gem pulsing like a second heartbeat. Boost! The power surged again, doubling his strength, sharpening his senses. Izuku ducked under the Nomu's swinging fist, the air whistling as it passed inches from his face. He countered with a powerful uppercut, the impact forcing the creature to stagger back, its beaked mouth snapping in frustration. For a moment, he felt invincible, the Red Dragon Emperor's power coursing through his veins. But his body was human, and humans had limits. Sweat stung his eyes, his ribs ached from earlier blows, and his breaths came in sharp, ragged gasps. "You're holding your own, partner," Ddraig's voice rumbled in his mind, steady but urgent. "But this beast was made to kill. You can't keep this up forever." Izuku didn't respond, his focus locked on the Nomu. He darted to the side, using the uneven terrain to his advantage, luring the creature into a narrow crevice where its massive frame struggled to maneuver. He struck again, his fist slamming into the Nomu's side, cracking the air with the force. The beast roared, its blank eyes unyielding, and swiped at him with a claw that grazed his shoulder, tearing through his hero costume. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. He had to protect his classmates. Momo Yaoyorozu and 𝐀𝐭𝐽 were fighting nearby, their quirks pushing back the lesser villains that swarmed the zone. Momo's creation quirk churned out shields and weapons, her movements precise but slowing with exhaustion. 𝐀𝐭𝐽's sonic blasts kept the enemies at bay, her earphone jacks vibrating with each attack, but her stamina was waning too. They were holding their ground, but barely. Then, a flicker of movement caught Izuku's eye, and his heart stopped. Shigaraki Tamura, the pale, lanky villain, had slipped through the chaos. He stood atop a jagged outcrop, his red eyes gleaming with intent as he fixed his gaze on Momo and 𝐀𝐭𝐽. "Let's see how these heroes break." Izuku's BLD ran cold. Shigaraki's quirk, Decay, could disintegrate anything with a single touch. Momo and 𝐀𝐭𝐽 were distracted, fending off a pair of villains wielding knives and a quirk that spat acid. They didn't see Shigaraki creeping closer, his hand outstretched, fingers ready to strike. Anger surged through Izuku, hot and primal. His vision sharpened, the world narrowing to the sight of Shigaraki's hand inching toward his friends. The boosted gear pulsed violently, as if it felt his rage, its scales flaring with a crimson light that bathed the zone in an eerie glow. "Partner," Ddraig's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and commanding. "Your heart screaming. The balance breaker is within reach. You can end this now, save them, stop him. But it'll cost you. 1 minute, and your stamina will be drained to nothing. You'll be defenseless after. Are you ready?" Izuku's breath hitched. The balance breaker. The ultimate form of the boosted gear, a power that could rival gods. He'd never reached it before, never pushed the gear that far. The cost was steep, 60 seconds of unmatched strength, followed by collapse. But Momo and Kyoka were in danger. Shigaraki was seconds away from touching them. Aizawa was still fighting elsewhere, overwhelmed by villains. All Might hadn't arrived. There was no one else. "Do it," Izuku thought, his resolve hardening like steel. "I won't let them die." "Then unleash me," Ddraig roared. "Call it forth." Izuku planted his feet, the ground cracking beneath him. The boosted gear's light intensified, its gem blazing like a star. He raised his arm, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Balance breaker." The world seemed to hold its breath. A torrent of crimson energy erupted from the gauntlet, enveloping Izuku in a whirlwind of power. His hero costume shredded at the seams as red dragon armor. Formed around him, sleek and menacing, its scales glinting like molten metal. Wings of energy sprouted from his back, shimmering with an otherworldly glow. The air vibrated with the force of his transformation, and the villains around him froze, their eyes wide with fear. "Scale mail." Ddraig's voice boomed, echoing across the zone. "The Red Dragon Emperor awakens." Izuku felt the power flood his body, every muscle, every nerve alight with the dragon's might. Time seemed to slow, his senses heightened to an almost painful clarity. He could hear Momo's sharp intake of breath, Kyoka's muttered curse, Shigaraki's excited giggle. He could feel the Nomu's movements, the tremor of its steps. And he could see Shigaraki's hand, inches from Momo's shoulder. He moved. In a blur of crimson, Izuku crossed the distance, his wings propelling him faster than humanly possible. He slammed into Shigaraki, his armored fist crashing into the villain's chest with a force that shook the ground. Shigaraki's eyes widened, a choked gasp escaping his lips as he was hurled backward, smashing through a boulder and skidding across the rubble. "Stay away from them." Izuku roared, his voice amplified by the balance breaker, carrying a draconic edge that sent chills through everyone present. Momo and Kyoka stared, their mouths agape. "Midoriya, what are you?" Kyoka whispered, her jacks trembling. "No time." Izuku shouted, turning to face the Nomu. The creature had recovered, its massive form charging toward him with a guttural roar. He met it head-on, his armored fists glowing with energy. Each punch was powerful, the impacts sending shockwaves that cracked the ground. The Nomu's regeneration struggled to keep up. 40 seconds left, Ddraig warned. "Make them count." Izuku's heart pounded, but he didn't falter. He ducked under the Nomu's claw, grabbing its arm and twisting with all his strength. The creature's limbs snapped, but it didn't stop. It swung its other fist, catching Izuku in the chest. The armor absorbed most of the blow, but pain lanced through him, a reminder of his human limits even in this form. He retaliated with a blazing uppercut, sending the Nomu staggering. He didn't let up, raining blows on the creature, each one fueled by the boosted gear's exponential power. The villains around them hesitated, their confidence shaken by the sight of the crimson-armored figure. But Shigaraki wasn't done. He rose from the rubble, his laughter echoing. "Oh, this is fun. You're no hero, are you? You're something else, something better." Izuku ignored him, focusing on the Nomu. He had to end this before his time ran out. He leaped into the air, his wings flaring, and dove toward the creature, his fist drawn back. Dragon shot. A beam of crimson energy erupted from his fist, slamming into the Nomu's chest. The blast sent it crashing into a cliff face, which collapsed in a shower of rock and dust. The 𝗏𝐽𝐻 didn't rise, its form buried under the debris. 20 seconds, Ddraig said, his voice tense. Izuku landed, his breaths heavy, his vision swimming. The balance breaker was draining him faster than he'd expected. His legs trembled, but he turned to Momo and 𝐀𝐿, who were fending off the remaining villains with renewed determination. "Get to the others," he shouted. "I'll cover you." Momo nodded, creating a smoke bomb and tossing it to obscure their escape. 𝐀𝐿 grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the central plaza. "Don't die, Midoriya," she called back. Izuku faced the remaining villains, his armor flickering as his stamina waned. Shigaraki clapped slowly, his grin wide. "You're out of time, Dragon Boy. Let's see how you handle this without your fancy armor." 10 seconds, Ddraig warned. Izuku's vision blurred, his body screaming for rest. But he couldn't stop. Not yet. He charged Shigaraki, his fist glowing with the last of his power. The villain dodged, but Izuku twisted away, landing a final punch that sent Shigaraki sprawling. "Time's up," Ddraig said. The balance breaker dissolved, the armor vanishing in a flash of light. Izuku collapsed to his knees, his body spent, the boosted gear reverting to its gauntlet form. He could barely move, his muscles trembling with exhaustion. The villains hesitated, unsure whether to attack the now vulnerable boy. Shigaraki staggered to his feet. Not bad at all. But this isn't over." Before he could advance, a deafening crash echoed through the USJ. The main entrance exploded inward, and a familiar voice boomed across the facility. "Have no fear, for I am here. All Might." The symbol of peace stood in the doorway, his presence a beacon of hope. The villains faltered, their confidence crumbling. Shigaraki hissed, clutching his chest. Another time, Dragon Boy." Kurojire's mist swirled, enveloping Shigaraki and the remaining villains. They vanished, leaving only destruction in their wake. The 𝗏𝐽𝐻 stirred beneath the rubble, but All Might was on it in an instant, his fists a blur as he subdued the creature. Izuku's vision darkened, his body slumping to the ground. Momo and 𝐀𝐿 rushed to his side, their voices distant but frantic. "Midoriya, hang on," Momo said, her hands shaking as she checked his pulse. 𝐀𝐿's jacks twitched, her face pale. "What was that?" "That wasn't a quirk." Izuku didn't answer. His consciousness faded, Ddraig's voice the last thing he heard. "You chose, partner. And you saved them. Rest now, you've earned it." As the USJ fell silent, Izuku's thoughts lingered on the choice he'd made. The boosted gear had saved his friends, but it had also exposed him. The supernatural world was closing in, and he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The infirmary at 𝐻𝐻 was a sterile sanctuary, its walls lined with medical equipment and the faint scent of antiseptic lingering in the air. Izuku Midoriya lay on a cot, his body aching from the ordeal at the unforeseen simulation joint. His dark-toned hero costume was folded neatly on a chair beside him, the torn sleeve a reminder of the boosted gear's unleashed power. The red gauntlet had faded back into his arm, invisible to the world, but its weight remained, a constant hum in his bones, a whisper in his mind. He stared at the ceiling, his thoughts a tangled mess. The balance breaker had saved Momo and 𝐀𝐿, had driven back Shigaraki and held off the 𝗏𝐽𝐻, but at what cost? His classmates had seen it, seen him, in a way he'd fought to keep hidden. The dragon armor, the crimson energy, the sheer power that wasn't a quirk. Questions would come, and he wasn't sure he had answers. The door creaked open, and Izuku's heart sank. Principal Nizu entered, his small frame deceptively unassuming, his beady eyes sharp with intelligence. Behind him was Detective Naomasa Tsukachi, his trench coat slightly rumpled, his face etched with concern but tempered by professionalism. Recovery Girl followed, her cane tapping softly as she checked a chart at the foot of Izuku's bed. "Midoriya," Nizu said, his voice chipper yet carrying an undercurrent of authority. "I'm glad to see you're awake. How are you feeling?" Izuku sat up slowly, wincing as his ribs protested. "Sore, but I'll be okay. Recovery Girl patched me up." The elderly hero nodded, adjusting her glasses. "You're lucky it's just bruises and exhaustion. That stunt you pulled could have broken every bone in your body. You're not leaving until I'm sure you're stable. Izuku managed a weak smile, but his eyes flicked to Nizu and Tsukachi. Their presence wasn't a coincidence. They weren't here to check on his health. Nizu hopped onto a stool, bringing himself to eye level. You gave us quite a show at the USJ, young man. Your classmates are safe, thanks in no small part to your efforts. But there are good questions. About what you did. Tsukachi pulled out a notepad, his expression neutral but focused. We've spoken to Yaoyorozu and Jiraiya. They described something extraordinary, a red armored form, energy blasts, wings. It didn't sound like the strength-based quirk you've claimed to have. Izuku's stomach twisted. He'd known this was coming, but the weight of their scrutiny made it real. The boosted gear stirred in his mind, Ddraig's voice a low rumble. Careful, partner. They're fishing. Give them enough to satisfy, but don't spill the whole truth. Izuku hesitated, his fingers tightening around the edge of the blanket. It's still my quirk. This has layers. I don't fully understand it myself. Nizu tilted his head, his smile unwavering but probing. Layers. That's an interesting way to describe what sounded like a transformation. Your classmates said it was unlike any quirk they've seen. Almost supernatural. The word hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Izuku's heart raced, but he kept his face steady. It's hard to explain. It's like my strength can amplify itself, but it takes a lot out of me. I don't use it often because it's unstable. Tsukachi's pen scratched against the notepad. Unstable how? You seemed in control when you took down that creature and knocked Shigaraki Tamura across the zone. That's not the work of an amateur. Izuku swallowed, his throat dry. I've been training. A lot. On my own. I didn't want to show it off until I was sure I could handle it. Nizu's eyes gleamed, as if he sensed the half-truth. Training is admirable, Midoriya. But this level of power and the form it took, it raises concerns. Quirks are regulated for a reason. If yours is as unique as it appears, we need to understand it to ensure everyone's safety, including yours. I get that, Izuku said, his voice quiet but firm. I'm not hiding anything dangerous. I'm still figuring it out. I didn't mean to scare anyone. Tsukachi exchanged a glance with Nizu, then leaned forward. Your classmates also mentioned a voice. Something about a red dragon emperor. Care to elaborate? Izuku's BLD ran cold. They'd heard Ddraig's proclamation during the balance breaker. He scrambled for an explanation, his mind racing. It's part of my quirk. Like a mental focus thing. I give it a name to help me channel it. It's not a big deal. Nice save, Ddraig muttered, a hint of amusement in his tone. But they're not buying it completely. Nizu's smile softened, but his gaze remained piercing. I see. Well, Midoriya, you're a student of UA, and we trust our students. But we'll need to monitor this unique quirk of yours. For now, we'll discuss this further when you're recovered. Tsukachi closed his notepad, his expression unreadable. If anything else comes to mind, Midoriya, you know where to find me. We're on your side, but we need the truth to keep you safe. Izuku nodded, his chest tight. Thank you, sir. I'll let you know if I figure out more. Recovery girl shooed them out, muttering about patients needing rest. As the door closed, Izuku sank back against the pillow, his mind a storm of worry. He'd dodged the worst of their questions, but he'd only bought time. The truth about the boosted gear wasn't something he could share. Not yet, maybe not ever. It wasn't just a quirk. It was a sacred gear, a relic of a world beyond heroes and villains, a world of devils and dragons that you wasn't equipped to understand. You're walking a tightrope, Ddraig said. Sooner or later, you'll have to choose how much to reveal or who to trust. Izuku closed his eyes, exhaustion pulling at him. I know, he whispered. But not today. By evening, Izuku was cleared to leave the infirmary. His ribs still ached, and his stamina was shot, but Recovery Girl's quirk had healed the worst of his injuries. He changed into some casual clothes, feeling oddly grounding after the chaos of the USJ. Izawa, battered but alive, had given him a curt nod on his way out, a silent acknowledgement of his actions. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The train ride home was quiet, the city lights blurring past the window. Izuku kept his hoodie up, his thoughts churning. Momo and Kyoka hadn't pressed him for answers, but their glances during the bus ride back to you had been heavy with questions. Bakugo, too, had been unusually silent, his usual scowl replaced by something unreadable. The secret of the boosted gear was unraveling, thread by thread, and Izuku wasn't sure how to stop it. When he reached his apartment building, the familiar sight of the modest complex brought a flicker of relief. He climbed the stairs, his body protesting each step, and fumbled with his keys at the door. The moment he stepped inside, the scent of his mother's cooking, miso soup and grilled fish, wrapped around him like a warm blanket. Izuku. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's Midoriya's voice called from the kitchen, bright but tinged with worry. "You're home." I was so worried when I heard about the incident at school, but Izuku couldn't focus as his eyes wandered towards the person sitting at the small dining table, sipping tea as if she belonged there. It was 𝐒𝐮𝐴𝐵. The crimson-haired girl looked every bit the regal figure she was, her 𝐾𝐻 Academy uniform pristine despite the late hour. Her blue-green eyes sparkled with a mix of amusement and curiosity as she set her teacup down, her lips curving into a gentle smile. "Good evening, Izuku. I'm glad you're in one piece." Izuku's jaw tightened, his bag slipping from his shoulder to the floor. "What are you doing here?" 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴𝐵 hurried over, her hands fluttering nervously. "Oh, Izuku, this is 𝐬𝐼𝐻, a friend of yours," she said. "She stopped by to check on you after what happened. She's been so kind, and we've been chatting." "Mom," Izuku interrupted, his voice sharper than he intended. He softened it immediately, seeing her flinch. "I'm okay, really. Can you give us a minute?" 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴𝐵 hesitated, her eyes flicking between Izuku and 𝐬𝐼𝐻. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll finish dinner." "𝐬𝐼𝐻, you're welcome to stay." "Thank you, Mrs. Midoriya," 𝐬𝐼𝐻 said smoothly, her voice warm but calculated. "I appreciate your hospitality." 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴𝐵 retreated to the kitchen, leaving Izuku and 𝐬𝐼𝐻 in the small living room. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. Izuku crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. "You shouldn't be here. Not in my home." 𝐬𝐼𝐻 stood, her movements graceful. "I didn't come to intrude. I came because what happened at the USJ changes things. You used the balance breaker, Izuku. That kind of power doesn't go unnoticed, not by your classmates, not by your teachers, and certainly not by the supernatural world." Izuku's fists clenched, his anger simmering but held in check. He couldn't lash out, not with his mother in the next room. "I didn't have a choice. My friends were in danger." "I know," 𝐬𝐼𝐻 said, her tone softening. "And you saved them. That's who you are. But you've drawn attention now. The kind of attention that doesn't fade." He turned away, staring at the faded wallpaper, his mind racing. "I told 𝐬𝐵 I'm not ready to join you. I don't trust you, or your world. I'm a hero, not a devil." 𝐬𝐼𝐻 stepped closer, her presence commanding despite her gentle demeanor. "You don't have to be a devil to be part of our world. Izuku, the boosted gear chose you. That makes you a player whether you like it or not. And players don't get to stay neutral forever." He spun to face her, his voice low but fierce. "I'll decide my own path. Not you, not 𝐬𝐵, not anyone." 𝐬𝐼𝐻 didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, a mix of respect and challenge in her eyes. "I admire that. But let me be clear, the challenges are only beginning. The villains at the USJ were just a taste. There are forces out there, devils, angels, fallen ones, who will come for you. The Red Dragon Emperor is a prize, and not everyone will ask nicely." Izuku's shoulders slumped, exhaustion creeping back in. He wanted to argue, to push her away, but her words rang true. The USJ had been a wake-up call. It wasn't just a villain attack, it was a glimpse of the larger conflict he'd been avoiding. They stood in silence, the sound of his mother's cooking filling the space. Finally, 𝐬𝐼𝐻 spoke again, her voice softer. "I'm not here to force you, but I am offering you a chance to understand our side. Come to 𝐾𝐻 Academy. Meet my peerage. See what we're about. No strings, no commitment. Just look." Izuku's eyes flicked to the kitchen, where his mother hummed softly, oblivious to the weight of this conversation. He thought of her, of the life he wanted to protect. A life of normalcy, of being a hero she could be proud of. But he also thought of the boosted gear, of the power that had saved his friends, and the cost it carried. He sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. I'm not saying yes. I'll see what your side is like. That's all. Rias's smile widened, genuine this time. That's enough for now. Get some rest, Izuku. You've earned it. She left quietly, her presence lingering like a shadow. Izuku waited until his mother called him for dinner, his mind a storm of doubt and determination. Later, as 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 slept, he sat on his bed, staring at his left hand where the boosted gear slumbered. She's right about one thing, Ddraig said, his voice a low rumble. The headaches are coming. But you're not alone, partner. Not if you don't want to be. Izuku didn't respond. He lay back, staring at the ceiling, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. The hero's path was his dream, but the dragon's path was his reality. For now, he'd walk both and hope he could keep them from colliding. Chapter 20. The train rattled along the tracks, its steady hum a backdrop to Izuku Midoriya's restless thoughts. 𝐻𝐼 had granted its students a day off to recover from the chaos of the 𝐬𝐮𝐽 attack, and while most of his classmates were likely sleeping in or processing the trauma, Izuku had boarded an early morning train to 𝐀𝐮𝐽 Town. His destination, 𝐀𝐮 Academy, the stronghold of 𝐬𝐮𝐽𝐴 and her mysterious peerage. The decision to visit weighed heavily on him, a mix of curiosity and caution churning in his gut. He didn't trust 𝐬𝐼 or her world, but her words had lingered. The supernatural wasn't something he could ignore forever, not with the boosted gear humming beneath his skin. He sat by the window, his hoodie pulled low over his green hair, his backpack resting on the seat beside him. The cityscape gave way to quieter suburbs, the buildings growing older and more ornate as the train neared 𝐀𝐮. His left arm tingled, the boosted gear's presence a constant reminder of the power he carried and the danger it attracted. Ddraig had been silent for most of the ride, but Izuku could feel the dragon's awareness, like a predator waiting in the shadows of his mind. You're stepping into their territory, Ddraig finally said, his voice a low rumble. Be sharp. Devils play games mortals don't always see. Izuku nodded faintly, his eyes fixed on the passing scenery. I'm not here to join them. I just need to understand what I'm dealing with. Understanding's a start. But don't let your guard down. The train slowed, and Izuku disembarked at 𝐀𝐮 Station, the morning air crisp and tinged with the scent of cherry blossoms. 𝐀𝐮 Town was quieter than Mizudafu, its streets lined with traditional buildings and modern storefronts blending seamlessly. He adjusted his backpack and followed the directions 𝐬𝐼 had given him, his sneakers scuffing against the pavement as he made his way toward 𝐀𝐮 Academy. The school came into view, its grand architecture striking even from a distance. The main building was a mix of Gothic and modern design, with tall spires and wide windows that gleamed in the sunlight. The campus was surrounded by a high wall, its gates open but imposing, as if daring outsiders to cross the threshold. Izuku's stomach tightened as he approached, his senses heightened. The boosted gear pulsed faintly, reacting to something in the air, an energy he couldn't quite place. Before he could reach the gate, a figure stepped into his path. She was tall, her posture rigid, with short black hair and sharp eyes framed by glasses. Her 𝐀𝐮 Academy uniform was pristine, her tie perfectly knotted, and a badge on her blazer marked her as the student council president. The air around her carried a subtle weight, a presence that made Izuku's instincts flare. You're Izuku Midoriya, she said, her voice calm but authoritative. I'm 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, student council president. State your business here. Izuku froze, his hand tightening around the strap of his backpack. The boosted gear stirred, and a faint scent reached him, not physical, but something deeper, like sulfur and shadow. She was a devil. He didn't know how he knew, but the dragon's senses were unmistakable. He kept his expression neutral, careful not to betray his realization. I'm here to meet 𝐬𝐮𝐽𝐴, he said, his tone steady but guarded. She invited me. 𝐬𝐮's eyes narrowed slightly, studying him. 𝐬𝐼 doesn't usually invite outsiders to campus. You're the one from the 𝐬𝐮𝐽𝐴 incident, aren't you? The boy with the unusual power. Izuku's heart skipped a beat, but he nodded. That's me. I'm just here to talk. Nothing more. She adjusted her glasses, her gaze piercing. 𝐀𝐮𝐬𝐽 Academy is a place of order. If you're here to cause trouble, you'll find it doesn't end well. I'm not here for trouble, Izuku said, meeting her eyes. I just want to understand what 𝐬𝐴𝐻 is offering. 𝐲𝐿 held his gaze for a moment longer, then stepped aside. Very well. You'll find her in the old school building, West Wing. Don't wander. This campus isn't as simple as it looks. Izuku nodded, his shoulders tense as he passed her. The scent of her devilish nature lingered, a reminder of the world he was stepping into. He crossed the gate, the campus unfolding before him, manicured lawns, cherry trees in bloom, and students milling about in their uniforms. It felt normal, almost too normal, but the boosted gear's faint hum told him otherwise. He found the old school building tucked behind the main campus, its ivy-covered walls and arched windows giving it an air of mystery. The door creaked as he pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit hallway that smelled of polished wood and old books. His footsteps echoed as he followed 𝐬𝐴𝐻's instructions, climbing a staircase to the second floor. At the end of the hall, he found a heavy oak door with a brass plaque that read, Occult Research Club. He hesitated, his hand hovering over the knob. This was it, the moment he'd see 𝐬𝐴𝐻's world for himself. He took a deep breath and knocked. Come in, 𝐬𝐴𝐻's voice called, warm and inviting. Izuku pushed the door open and stepped into a room that felt like it belonged in a different era. The space was large, with high ceilings and stained glass windows casting colorful patterns across the floor. A plush sofa sat against one wall, flanked by bookshelves filled with ancient tomes. A desk dominated the center, and behind it stood 𝐬𝐴𝐻 Gremory, her crimson hair glowing in the soft light. She smiled, her blue-green eyes sparkling with a mix of warmth and calculation. Izuku, she said, stepping forward. I'm glad you came. Seated around the room were three others, each radiating a distinct presence. 𝐀𝐮𝐴𝐻 leaned against a windowsill, his blonde hair catching the light, his smile polite but guarded. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 sat cross-legged on a chair, her petite frame and white hair deceptive of her strength, her golden eyes studying Izuku with quiet intensity. 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 stood near 𝐬𝐴𝐻, her long black ponytail swaying slightly, her smile playful but with an edge that made Izuku's skin prickle. Welcome to the Occult Research Club, 𝐬𝐴𝐻 said, gesturing to the group. This is my peerage, 𝐾𝐵A, 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, and 𝐒𝐮𝐻. You've already met 𝐾𝐵A, of course? 𝐾𝐵A nodded, his expression softening. Good to see you again, Midoriya. I hope you're doing well after the USJ. Izuku managed a small smile, but his guard remained up. I'm fine. Thanks. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 tilted her head, her voice soft but blunt. You smell different. Stronger than last time. Izuku tensed, but 𝐒𝐮𝐻 laughed, her voice light and melodic. Oh, 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, don't scare him off. He's our guest, after all. She stepped closer, her eyes glinting with mischief. I'm 𝐒𝐮𝐻, 𝐬𝐴𝐻's queen. It's a pleasure to meet the Red Dragon Emperor in person. Izuku's jaw tightened at the title, but he didn't correct her. I'm just here to listen, he said, his voice firm. 𝐬𝐴𝐻 said I could see what your side is like. That's all. 𝐬𝐴𝐻 nodded, her expression approving. Fair enough. Sit please. Let's talk. Izuku took a seat on the sofa, his posture rigid. The room felt charged, the air thick with the presence of devils. The boosted gear pulsed faintly, as if sensing the power around him. They're strong, Ddraig said. Each one's a force in their own right. Pay attention. 𝐬𝐴𝐻 sat across from him, her hands folded neatly. I know you don't trust us, Izuku, and I respect that. You're cautious, and you should be. The supernatural world isn't kind to the unprepared. But you're already part of it, whether you want to be or not. Izuku frowned, his fingers tapping his knee. Because of the boosted gear. Exactly, 𝐬𝐴𝐻 said. The sacred gear you carry is one of the Longinus, the most powerful of its kind. It makes you a target for devils, angels, and others. What happened at the USJ was just the beginning. The more you use your power, the more attention you'll draw. 𝐾𝐵A leaned forward, his tone earnest. You fought well, Midoriya. But you were alone. Against enemies like that, even the Red Dragon Emperor needs allies. Izuku's eyes narrowed. I have allies. My classmates, my teachers, they're enough. Are they? Akino asked, her smile softening but her words sharp. Your friends are brave, but they're human. They don't understand the forces you're facing. We do. Kaneko nodded, her voice quiet but firm. You're strong. But strength alone doesn't win battles. Not the kind we fight. Izuku's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to insist he could handle it on his own, but the memory of the USJ made him pause. He'd used the balance breaker to save them, but it had nearly broken him. And the scrutiny from the hero world was already closing in, demanding answers he couldn't give. What exactly is your side? He asked, his voice low. You keep talking about your world, your peerage. What does that mean? What do you want from me? Rias leaned back, her expression thoughtful. We're devils, Izuku. Not the kind from fairy tales, but beings of power, bound by our own rules and hierarchies. My peerage is my family, those I've chosen to stand with me. We protect our territory, fight our enemies, and navigate the politics of the supernatural world. I'm offering you a place among us, not as a servant, but as an equal. A partner. Izuku's frown deepened. And what's the catch? You don't offer something like that for free. Akino chuckled, her eyes glinting. Perceptive. There's always a price, isn't there? Rias shot Akino a look, then turned back to Izuku. The price is commitment. If you join us, you'd be part of our world, our battles, our responsibilities. You'd gain our protection, our knowledge, our strength. But you'd also face our enemies. And yes, you'd become a devil like us. Izuku's breath caught. A devil? You mean I'd stop being human? Rias nodded, her expression serious. It's not a decision to make lightly. But it's a choice, Izuku. One I'd never force on you. That's why I invited you here, to see who we are, what we do. To decide for yourself. Kiba spoke up, his voice calm but weighted. Being a devil isn't about losing who you are. It's about gaining the power to protect what matters. You want to be a hero, don't you? This is another way to do that. Izuku's mind raced. The idea of becoming a devil clashed with everything he dreamed of, being a hero like All Might, saving people with a smile. But the boosted gear had already changed him, pulled him into a world where heroes and villains weren't the only players. He thought of his mother, of his classmates, of the life he wanted to protect. Could he do that alone, with the weight of the dragon on his shoulders? What do you do exactly? He asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You say you fight enemies, protect territory. What does that look like? Rias stood, gesturing to the room. Let me show you. She led him to a bookshelf, pulling out a thick tome bound in leather. She opened it, revealing pages filled with symbols and diagrams, magic circles, maps of territories, names of clans. This is the history of my family, the 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 clan. We're high-ranking devils, responsible for Kuo Town. We deal with threats, rogue devils, fallen angels, even human factions who meddle in our world. We also help humans, in our own way, through contracts and pacts. She flipped to a page showing a glowing circle, its lines intricate and pulsing with faint energy. This is a summoning circle. Humans who know of us can call on us for help. In exchange, they offer something: loyalty, service, sometimes their souls. It's not as sinister as it sounds. We don't force anyone. It's a choice. Izuku's eyes widened, but he kept silent, absorbing her words. Akino stepped forward, her smile teasing but her tone serious. We also train, fight, and sometimes play politics. The supernatural world is a chessboard, and we're pieces on it. But we're a family too. We look out for each other. Kaneko nodded, her golden eyes fixed on Izuku. You'd fit in. You're stubborn, like us. Izuku's lips twitched, almost a smile, but his guard remained up. And if I say no? If I walk away? Rias closed the book, her expression unreadable. Then you walk away. I meant what I said, no strings. But the boosted gear makes you a target, Izuku. Without allies who understand that power, you'll be fighting alone. And the enemies coming for you won't care about your hero dreams. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over him. He looked at each of them, Rias, confident and commanding, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, earnest and loyal, Aquino, playful but serious, Kaneko, quiet but fierce. They were a unit, a family, just as she'd said. Part of him envied that bond, but another part recoiled at the cost of joining them. I don't trust you, he said finally, his voice steady. Not completely. I'll try to understand. I'll keep coming, keep listening. That's all I can promise. Rias's smile returned, softer this time. That's more than enough. Take your time, Izuku. The door's always open. 𝐀𝐮𝐽 clapped a hand on his shoulder, his grin genuine. You're tougher than you look, Midoriya. I like that. Aquino leaned in, her voice a playful whisper. Don't keep us waiting too long, Dragon Boy. Kaneko just nodded, a rare flicker of approval in her eyes. Izuku stood, his backpack slung over his shoulder. I should get back. My mom will worry if I'm gone too long. Rias walked him to the door, her presence a quiet reassurance. Thank you for coming, Izuku. You're welcome here, whenever you're ready. He stepped into the hallway, the door closing softly behind him. The campus was quieter now, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows across the lawn. As he walked back to the station, the boosted gear pulsed faintly, Ddraig's voice breaking the silence. They're not wrong about the enemies, partner. But you're not wrong to hold your ground. Keep your eyes open. Izuku nodded, his resolve firm. He'd seen their world, felt its pull, but he wasn't ready to step into it. Not yet. For now, he'd keep learning, keep fighting, and keep the dragon's power in check. The hero's path was still his, but the devil's domain was closer than ever. Chapter 21. The morning sun cast a golden haze over 𝐒𝐮𝐴, its light filtering through the leaves of the trees lining the streets. Izuku Midoriya walked slowly, his hands stuffed in the pockets of his hoodie, his school bag slung over one shoulder. 𝐒𝐮𝐴 had resumed classes after the USJ incident, but the weight of that day lingered, a shadow that followed him with every step. His visit to Kuo Academy the previous day had only deepened his unease, Rias Gremory's words echoing in his mind like a warning bell. The supernatural world was closing in, and the boosted gear's power was both his shield and his burden. He'd left home early, needing the quiet of the morning to clear his head. The streets were calm, the usual bustle of commuters still an hour away. His sneakers scuffed against the pavement, the rhythm grounding him as he let his thoughts wander. The memory of the balance breaker, its crimson armor, its overwhelming strength, played on a loop, mingling with Nizu's probing questions and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's piercing gaze. He wanted to be a hero, to save people with a smile like All Might, but the dragon's power was pulling him into a different world, one he wasn't sure he could navigate. You're brooding, partner, Ddraig's voice rumbled in his mind, a mix of amusement and concern. The walk's supposed to clear your head, not cloud it more. Izuku sighed, his breath visible in the cool air. I just need to think. Everything's happening too fast. The world doesn't wait for you to catch up. But you're not alone, even if you feel like it. Before Izuku could respond, a soft cry snapped him out of his thoughts. Up ahead, near a narrow alley lined with cherry trees, a girl stumbled and fell to the ground, her blonde hair catching the sunlight as she landed on her knees. A small bag spilled beside her, its contents, books, a water bottle, a folded cloth, scattering across the pavement. Izuku hurried forward, his instincts kicking in. Hey, are you okay? He asked, kneeling beside her. The girl looked up, her emerald eyes wide with embarrassment. She was about his age, her delicate features framed by long blonde hair tied with a green ribbon. Her outfit was simple but striking, a white dress with a blue trim, reminiscent of a nun's habit, though less formal. She clutched her scraped knee, her cheeks flushed as she stammered in a language Izuku recognized instantly as Italian. Me despias, non volevo disturb, she said, her voice soft and apologetic. To his surprise, Izuku understood her perfectly, the words clear in his mind as if they were Japanese. He blinked, caught off guard, but responded in Italian without thinking. Non preoccuparti, non disturbo. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. The girl's eyes widened, relief washing over her face. Parli Italiano. Oh, grazie al cielo. Pensavo di essere completamente persa. Izuku helped her gather her belongings, his mind racing. He'd never spoken Italian before, but the boosted gear's influence was unmistakable. Ddraig's power wasn't just physical, it extended to his senses, his understanding, even his ability to communicate. A perk of hosting a dragon, Ddraig said, a hint of pride in his tone. Languages are nothing to me. You're welcome. I'm Izuku Midoriya, he said, handing her the last of her items. What's your name? 𝐴𝐵𝐴𝐴𝐵, she replied, her smile shy but warm. Sono arrivata a 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 ieri. Non parlo Japanese, quindi è difficile orientarmi. Izuku nodded, switching back to Italian effortlessly. You're new here. Where are you trying to go? I can help. 𝐴𝐵𝐴 clutched her bag, her expression grateful but hesitant. Sto cercando una vecchia chiesa su una collina. Mi hanno detto che è qui vicino, ma non conosco la strada. Izuku's brow furrowed. A church on a hill. He knew the place, an abandoned chapel on the outskirts of town, its steeple visible from certain streets. It was an odd destination, especially for someone new to the area. The boosted gear pulsed faintly, but he didn't sense anything unusual about 𝐴𝐵𝐴. She seemed human, her presence gentle, almost fragile. It's not far, he said, standing. I can walk you there. It's on my way. 𝐴𝐵𝐴's face lit up, her hands clasping together. Davvero? Grazie mille, Izuku. Sei molto gentile. They set off, Izuku leading the way through the quiet streets. 𝐴𝐵𝐴 walked beside him, her steps light but uncertain, her eyes darting to the unfamiliar surroundings. She spoke softly, explaining that she'd come from Italy, sent by her church to assist at the chapel in 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴. Her Japanese was non-existent, and she'd been struggling to navigate since arriving. Izuku listened, his curiosity growing, but a nagging unease settled in his chest. The church was abandoned, its congregation long gone. Why would someone be sent there? Something's off, Ddraig said. No scent of fallen angels or devils, but that church isn't what it seems. Keep your eyes open. Izuku nodded subtly, his senses sharp as they approached the hill. The church came into view, its weathered stone walls overgrown with ivy, its windows dark and cracked. It looked more like a relic than a place of worship, its isolation adding to its eerie atmosphere. This is it, Izuku said, stopping at the base of the hill. Are you sure this is where you're supposed to be? 𝐴𝐵𝐴 nodded, her smile unwavering. Yes, this is the place. Thank you, Izuku. Would you like to come in? I can offer you some tea to thank you. Izuku hesitated, glancing at the church. The boosted gear was quiet, no trace of the supernatural taint he'd sensed from Rias or Sauna, but his instincts urged caution. Besides, he had school, and the last thing he needed was to get tangled in another mystery. Thanks, but I have to get to class. Maybe another time. 𝐴𝐵𝐴's smile faltered, but she nodded. I understand. You've been very kind. I hope to see you again soon. Izuku gave her a small wave, watching as she climbed the hill toward the church. Her figure grew smaller, her blonde hair catching the light until she disappeared through the arched doorway. He turned away, his unease lingering, but he pushed it aside. He had enough to worry about without chasing shadows. The walk to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 was uneventful, the morning growing busier as the city woke up. By the time he reached the campus, students were streaming through the gates, their chatter a stark contrast to the quiet of his earlier encounter. The towering walls of 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 loomed ahead, a symbol of his dream, but also a reminder of the questions waiting inside. In Class 1A, the atmosphere was subdued, the recent events still fresh in everyone's minds. Izuku slipped into his seat near the window, his bag at his feet, and tried to ignore the glances from his classmates. Some were curious, others concerned, but all carried a weight that hadn't been there before. The boosted gear's display had changed how they saw him, and he wasn't sure how to handle it. Momo Yaoyorozu approached his desk, her expression soft but serious. Midoriya, I wanted to thank you for what you did during the recent incident. You saved us. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, his cheeks flushing. It was nothing. I just did what I had to. It wasn't nothing, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 said, sliding into the seat beside him. Her earphone jacks twitched, her eyes sharp but not unkind. You took on that villain and that other guy. You're okay, right? You looked rough after. I'm fine, Izuku said, forcing a smile. Just a little sore. Recovery girl fixed me up. Momo nodded, but her gaze lingered. That power you used, it was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 leaned closer, her voice low. Yeah, and I only saw that gauntlet thing before, not the full, whatever that was. Armor, energy blasts, wings. That's not just enhanced physicality. What's the deal, Midoriya? Izuku's heart raced, his mind scrambling for a response. He couldn't tell them the truth, not about the boosted gear, not about the supernatural world. But he couldn't lie outright either, not to Momo and 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who'd fought beside him. It's complicated, he said finally. My quirk has a boost function, but it's hard to control. I don't use it much because it can be risky. 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨 raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but she didn't push. Risky? Looked like you had it under control when you faced that villain. Momo placed a hand on 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨's shoulder, her tone gentle. We're just worried, Midoriya. You pushed yourself too far. If there's more to it, you can tell us. We're your friends. Izuku's chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and guilt. Thanks, but I'll let you know if I need to talk. I just need some time. 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨 nodded, her expression softening. Fair enough. But don't think you're off the hook. I want answers eventually. Before Izuku could respond, Aizawa entered, his presence grounding them. The class fell silent. Settle down, he said, his voice firm. We're resuming training, but we're taking it slow. No heroics until we're sure you're ready. The lesson began, but Izuku's mind wandered, drifting back to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝗪 and the church. Her kindness had been genuine, but the abandoned chapel felt wrong, like a piece of a puzzle he didn't yet understand. The boosted gear hadn't sensed fallen angels or devils, but Ddraig's warning echoed in his thoughts. The church is a blind spot, Ddraig said, his voice low. No scent doesn't mean no danger. That girl's caught in something, even if she doesn't know it. Izuku nodded to himself, his resolve hardening. He'd keep an eye on 𝐻𝐵, just in case. For now, he'd focus on school, on being a hero, on keeping the dragon's power in check. But the supernatural world was creeping closer, and he knew, deep down, that his walk with 𝐻𝐵 was only the beginning of something much larger. The classroom of 𝐻𝐵's Class 1A buzzed with a tentative energy, the students settling into their desks as the morning sun streamed through the windows. The recent attack had left a lingering tension, but the routine of lessons offered a fragile sense of normalcy. Izuku Midoriya sat near the back, his notebook open but his mind elsewhere, still reeling from his encounter with 𝐻𝐵 and the unsettling mystery of the abandoned church. The boosted gear hummed faintly in his arm, a quiet reminder of the dragon's power and the secrets he carried. Aizawa stood at the front, his bandaged arm tucked into a sling, his usual scowl softened by fatigue. Focus, he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. We're reviewing rescue protocols today. No distractions. Izuku tried to concentrate, jotting notes on disaster response strategies, but his thoughts kept drifting. The memory of 𝐻𝐵's offer, Kaniko's blunt words, and the supernatural world's encroaching presence gnawed at him. He glanced at his classmates, Momo organizing her notes with precision, 𝐀𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 tapping her pencil to an inaudible rhythm, Bakugo glaring at nothing in particular. They were his world, his anchor to the hero path, but the boosted gear was pulling him elsewhere. The classroom door slid open with a soft thud, and every head turned. Standing in the doorway was Kaniko Tsuju, her petite frame unmistakable despite the unfamiliar setting. Her Kuo Academy uniform, navy blazer, white shirt, and plaid skirt, stood out starkly against 𝐻𝐵's green and gray. Her white hair gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and her golden eyes scanned the room with a bored intensity, landing on Izuku. His heart lurched, his pencil slipping from his fingers and clattering to the desk. What is she doing here? His mind raced, panic bubbling up. The boosted gear pulsed, Ddraig's voice a low chuckle in his head. Looks like the kitten's come to play. This should be interesting. Izuku's eyes narrowed, his scarf twitching slightly. You're not a student here. Explain yourself. Kaneko tilted her head, her expression blank but her voice steady. I'm here for Midoriya. Personal business. The class erupted into whispers, heads swiveling between Kaneko and Izuku. Denki Kaminari leaned forward, his grin wide and mischievous. Yo, Midoriya, you got a friend from another school. Spill the tea. Izuku's face flushed crimson, his hands flailing. No, it's not like that. She's just, someone I met. Minoru Mineta, never one to miss an opportunity, popped up from his seat, eyes gleaming. A cute girl in a fancy uniform shows up for you. Midoriya, you're holding out on us. Introduce her. Kaneko's gaze flicked to Mineta, her eyes narrowing into a glare that could have frozen lava. Sit down, great boy, or I'll make you. Mineta squeaked, diving back into his chair, his bravado evaporating. The class burst into laughter, even Bakugo snorting despite himself. Izuku pinched the bridge of his nose, clearly regretting his life choices. Enough. You, state your name and purpose, or you're out. Kaneko Tuju, she said, unfazed. I need to talk to Midoriya. It won't take long. Izuku's stomach churned. He could feel the weight of his classmates' stares, their curiosity a tangible pressure. Kaneko's presence was a neon sign flashing his connection to the supernatural world, and he wasn't ready for that spotlight. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Sir, can I step out for a minute? I'll be quick. Izuku's scowl deepened, but he waved a hand. 5 minutes. Don't make me regret this. Izuku hurried to the door, his heart pounding as Kaneko turned and walked out, clearly expecting him to follow. The hallway was quiet, the echo of their footsteps bouncing off the polished floors. As soon as the door closed behind them, Izuku spun to face her, his voice a frantic whisper. What are you doing here? This is my school. You can't just show up like that. Kaneko crossed her arms, her expression as impassive as ever. Ria sent me. Said you might need a nudge after yesterday. Plus, I was bored. Bored. Izuku's voice cracked, his hands gesturing wildly. You can't just walk into you. Because you're bored. People are already asking questions about the recent events, and now you're here, looking like a student in a uniform. Kaneko offered, a rare smirk tugging at her lips. Izuku groaned, dragging a hand through his hair. This is bad. Really bad. My classmates are going to think. Before he could finish, the classroom door burst open, and Denki and Mineta spilled out, their faces alight with mischief. Denki grinned, pointing a finger. See, I told you he's got a secret friend. Midoriya, you sly dog. Mineta nodded eagerly, his eyes shining with excitement. She's tiny but fierce. Spill it, Midoriya. What's the deal with you and Missy over here? Kaneko's smirk faded, replaced by a glare that made both boys freeze. You two are annoying. Back off. Denki laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. Whoa, chill, we're just being friendly. Right, Mineta? Yeah, Mineta said, puffing out his chest. We just want to introduce ourselves. I'm Minoru Mineta, future ladies' man, and this is Denki Kaminari, resident spark plug. So, you and Midoriya, how'd you meet? Kaneko's eyes flicked to Izuku, a silent question in her gaze. He shook his head frantically, mouthing, no. She ignored him, stepping forward with a confident stride that made Denki take a step back. I'm Kaneko. Midoriya's a friend. That's all you need to know. Denki raised an eyebrow, undeterred. Friend? Come on, give us something interesting. Did he save you from a villain or what? Izuku's panic spiked, his mind racing with thoughts of the USJ and the secrets he was trying to keep. Guys, seriously, it's not like that. She's just, helping me with something. Mineta waggled his eyebrows. Helping with what? Secret training. Late-night study sessions. Kaneko's patience snapped. In a quick motion, she grabbed Izuku's arm, her grip surprisingly strong for her small frame. We're done here, she said, leading him down the hall. Hey, wait. Denki called, jogging after them. You can't just take our classmate. Yeah. 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐻 added, scurrying to keep up. This is a hero school. We've got rights. Kaneko didn't slow down, her golden eyes fixed ahead. Izuku stumbled alongside her, his face burning as he tried to keep up. Kaneko, let go. You're making this worse. She glanced at him, her expression firm. You're too slow. And those two are loud. We're talking somewhere quiet. They reached a stairwell, and Kaneko finally released him, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Denki and 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐻 caught up, breathing but still grinning like they discovered something exciting. Izuku waved his hands, desperate to salvage the situation. Guys, really it's fine. Go back to class. Aizawa's gonna be mad at us. Denki smirked, leaning against the railing. Not until we get the full story. Come on, Midoriya, you're holding out on us. First that crazy armor at the USJ, now a mysterious girl dragging you off. You're living a shonen manga. Kaneko's eyes narrowed, and she took a step toward Denki, who yelped and hid behind 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐻. Okay, we'll go. Denki said, raising his hands. But we're watching you, Midoriya. 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐻 nodded, though he looked ready to run. Yeah, don't think you're off the hook. We'll get the truth eventually. They hurried back toward the classroom, their laughter echoing down the hall. Izuku groaned, slumping against the wall. This is a disaster. They're never going to let this go. Kaneko shrugged, her voice dry. They're just being silly. Ignore them. Izuku shot her a look. Easy for you to say. You don't have to deal with them every day. Why are you even here? Rias didn't need to send you. Kaneko tilted her head, her expression softening slightly. She didn't. I wanted to check on you. You used the balance breaker. That's not something you just walk off. And, she paused, her golden eyes studying him. You're stubborn. I like that. But you're also in over your head. Izuku's shoulders tensed, the boosted gear pulsing faintly. She's not wrong, Ddraig said, his tone light. But she has a knack for showing up at the worst times. I'm not in over my head, Izuku said, his voice firm but tinged with doubt. I can handle this. The USJ was a lot, but I'm fine. Kaneko raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. You almost collapsed. Your stamina's a problem. If you're going to keep using the gear, you need to train smarter, not just harder. Izuku opened his mouth to argue, but the bell rang, signaling the end of the PRD. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I have to get back. Kaneko nodded, stepping back. Fine. But Rias meant what she said. You're welcome with us. Think about it. She turned to leave, her small figure disappearing down the stairwell. Izuku stood there, his mind a whirlwind of frustration and confusion. Kaneko's visit had turned his already complicated situation into a spectacle, and he could already imagine the rumors spreading through Class 1A. Back in the classroom, the atmosphere was buzzing. Denki and 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐻 were already sharing exaggerated tales of Kaneko's kidnapping, their voices rising above the chatter. Momo approached Izuku as he slipped back into his seat, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. Midoriya, who was that girl? She seemed intense. Izuku forced a laugh, his heart still racing. Just someone I know from another school. It's not a big deal. Kyoka leaned over, her earphone jacks twitching. Not a big deal. She marched in here like she owned the place and dragged you off. Spill it, Midoriya. You're collecting weird friends faster than I collect vinyls. The class laughed, and even Izuku couldn't help but crack a smile, though it was strained. It's complicated, She's just helping with something. Bakugo snorted from his desk, his voice dripping with disdain. Helping her? You're such a nerd, Deku, picking up strays wherever you go. Izuku ignored him, focusing on his notebook, but the weight of the class's attention lingered. The day dragged on, lessons blending into a blur of hero tactics and quirk analysis, but Kaneko's visit had left a mark. By the time the final bell rang, Izuku was exhausted, his mind tangled with thoughts of devils, dragons, and the hero he still wanted to be. As he packed his bag, Kyoka lingered nearby, her expression softer than usual. Hey, Midoriya. For real, Yoka? That girl showing up, You're carrying a lot. Izuku paused, his hand on his bag. I'm okay. Just figuring things out. She nodded, her eyes searching his. Well, if you need to talk, I'm here. And I'm still curious about that gauntlet of yours. Don't think I forgot. He managed a genuine smile this time. Thanks, 𝐬𝗓𝗓. I'll keep that in mind. As he left the classroom, the boosted gear pulsed, Ddraig's voice a quiet murmur. Your world's getting crowded, partner. Better get used to it. Izuku sighed, stepping into the afternoon sun. Kaniko's unexpected visit had thrown him off balance, but it had also reminded him of the stakes. The supernatural world was no longer a distant threat. It was here, in his school, in his life. And whether he liked it or not, he'd have to face it head-on. The night air in 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 town carried a chill, the streets bathed in the soft glow of streetlights and the occasional flicker of neon signs. Izuku Midoriya's breath misted as he walked, his hoodie pulled tight against the autumn breeze. His decision to visit the Occult Research Club again had been impulsive, spurred by Kaniko's unexpected appearance at 𝐸 and the growing weight of the boosted gear's presence in his life. The dragon's power was a constant hum in his arm, a reminder that the supernatural world was no longer a choice but a reality he couldn't outrun. You're seeking answers, partner, Ddraig's voice rumbled in his mind, steady but tinged with curiosity. But don't expect them to come easy. Devils guard their truths closely. Izuku didn't respond, his focus on the looming silhouette of 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐴 Academy. The campus was eerily quiet at night, its gates closed but not locked, as if inviting those who knew its secrets. He slipped through, his sneakers silent on the cobblestone path, and made his way to the old-school building. The ivy-covered walls seemed to absorb the moonlight, giving the structure an almost otherworldly aura. His heart thudded, a mix of anticipation and unease, as he climbed the stairs to the Occult Research Club's room. He knocked, the sound sharp in the stillness. The door creaked open almost immediately, revealing 𝐬𝐴 standing in the doorway. Her crimson hair caught the dim light, cascading over her shoulders, and her blue-green eyes sparkled with a warmth that didn't quite mask her calculating nature. She wore a casual sweater and skirt, a stark contrast to her usual 𝐾𝐮𝐴 uniform, but her presence was no less commanding. Izuku, she said, her voice smooth and welcoming. I didn't expect you so soon. Come in. He stepped inside, the familiar scent of old books and polished wood washing over him. The Occult Research Club's room was as grand as he remembered, its stained glass windows casting fractured moonlight across the floor. The plush sofa was empty, the bookshelves silent, and the desk at the center gleamed under a single lamp. 𝐬𝐴 gestured to a chair, her smile inviting but guarded. Where's everyone else? Izuku asked, his voice cautious as he sat. The absence of 𝐾𝐮𝐵, Aquino, and Kaniko made the room feel oddly NTMT, and he wasn't sure if that was intentional. They're handling other matters, 𝐬𝐴 said, settling into the chair across from him. It's just us tonight. I thought you might prefer a quieter conversation. Izuku nodded, his fingers tapping his knee. The boosted gear pulsed faintly, Ddraig's awareness a steady presence in his mind. He'd come to learn more about 𝐬𝐴's world, to understand the stakes of the supernatural realm, but trust was still a distant prospect. I'm here because I need to know more. About what you do, what it means to be part of your peerage. But I'm not committing to anything. 𝐬𝐴's smile softened, her eyes studying him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. I appreciate your honesty. You're cautious, and that's wise. Let's start with why you came tonight. Something's on your mind, isn't it? Izuku hesitated, his thoughts drifting to Kaniko's visit, Asia Argento's gentle smile, and the abandoned church. The weight of it all pressed against him, but he wasn't ready to share everything. Things are getting complicated, he admitted. At school with my power. People are asking questions and I don't know how to answer them. 𝐬𝐴 leaned forward, her hands folded neatly. The USJ changed things for you. Using the balance breaker was a bold move, but it put you on a stage you weren't ready for. Your classmates, your teachers, they're starting to see you're more than you seem. Izuku's jaw tightened. I didn't have a choice. My friends were in danger. I know, 𝐬𝐴 said, her voice gentle but firm. And that's why you're here. You're realizing the boosted gear isn't just a tool, it's a beacon. It draws attention from humans and others. You can't hide it forever. He looked away, his gaze settling on the stained glass window depicting a rose entwined with thorns. I don't want to hide. I want to use it to help people, to be a hero. But your world, it's different. I don't understand it yet. Ria stood, crossing to the bookshelf and pulling out a small, leather-bound journal. She handed it to him, its pages worn but intact. This is a record of my peerage's work over the past year. Not the grand battles, but the small things. Helping humans with their wishes, protecting this town from threats they'll never see. We're not just devils, Izuku. We're guardians in our own way. He flipped through the journal, his eyes scanning entries written in elegant script. A contract to heal a sick child, a battle against a rogue devil in an alley, a negotiation with a fallen angel to prevent a turf war. Each entry was meticulous, detailing the balance of power and compassion that defined Rias's role. He closed the book, his mind racing. This is a lot. You're saying you protect people, but you also fight. Against what? Against anything that threatens our balance, Rias said, returning to her seat. Devils, fallen angels, rogue factions, even humans who dabble in things they shouldn't. Kuo is our territory, but it's also a crossroads. Supernatural forces converge here, and we keep them in check. Izuku's fingers tightened around the journal. And you think I belong in that fight because of the boosted gear? Rias's eyes gleamed with certainty. The boosted gear makes you a target, but it also makes you a force. You could tip the scales, Izuku, for better or worse. With us, you'd have allies who understand that power, who can help you wield it without losing yourself. He leaned back, his mind a storm of doubt and curiosity. The idea of allies was tempting. Kiba's earnest loyalty, Akino's playful strength, Kaniko's quiet resolve, but the cost loomed large. Becoming a devil meant leaving his humanity behind, a price he wasn't ready to pay. You keep saying I'd be an equal, but what does that really mean? Would I have to follow your orders? Rias laughed, a soft sound that echoed in the quiet room. I'm not a tyrant. My peerage is a family, not an army. We make decisions together, but yes, there's a hierarchy. As my peer, you'd have responsibilities, but also freedom. You'd still be you, just stronger, with a longer life to pursue your dreams. Izuku's eyes narrowed. A longer life as a devil. That's the catch, isn't it? I'd stop being human. Yes, Rias said, her voice unwavering. But humanity isn't just flesh and blood. It's who you are, what you fight for. You'd still be Izuku Midoriya, the boy who wants to save everyone. He looked down at his left hand, where the boosted gear lay dormant. Ddraig's voice cut through his thoughts, steady and grounding. She's not lying, but she's not telling you everything. Devils always have an angle. Keep your wits. The conversation shifted, Rias sharing stories of her peerage's battles. Kiba's swordsmanship against a fallen angel, Akino's lightning tearing through a rogue devil's defenses, Kaniko's strength holding a collapsing building long enough for civilians to escape. Each tale painted a picture of a world where power was both a gift and a burden, where loyalty bound them as much as duty. Izuku listened, his curiosity growing despite his reservations, but a nagging question lingered. How do you know so much about me? He asked suddenly, his voice sharp. You knew about the USJ, about what I did. Are you watching me? Rias's smile faltered, just for a moment, but it was enough to confirm his suspicion. She leaned back, her expression careful. I keep an eye on those who interest me, Izuku. The boosted gear is a rare power, and Kuo isn't far from Yuzurifu. I'd be a poor leader if I didn't stay informed. His eyes narrowed, a spark of determination igniting within him. So you're watching me? Not watching, Rias replied, her tone calm but resolute. Observing. There's a difference. I need to know who I'm offering my trust to. Izuku's expression hardened, his fists clenching. And what about my trust? You show up at my house, send Kaniko to my school, and now you're admitting you've been keeping an eye on me. That doesn't feel like trust. Rias met his gaze, unwavering. I understand why you're upset. But the supernatural world is complicated. I have to be cautious, just as you are. If it helps, I'll be direct. Stay away from the nun you met today. Izuku froze, his frustration rising. Asia, how do you even know about her? Rias's expression shifted, a serious tone in her voice. Her name is 𝐻𝗧𝗟𝗘, and she's connected to things you don't fully understand yet. That church she's at, it's not what it seems. There are people in this town who might take advantage of her, and you. I'm telling you this to protect you. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. You don't get to tell me who I can help. Asia's lost, alone, and she doesn't know anyone here. If she's in trouble, I'm not going to ignore her just because you say so. Rias rose, her presence strong despite the tension. I'm not saying ignore her. I'm saying be careful. The church is a blind spot, even for us. There are forces there that could see you as a target. The boosted gear makes you stand out, and getting close to her could pull you into a situation you're not ready for. Izuku's glare didn't waver, but uncertainty crept in. The church had felt off, its emptiness contrasting with Asia's gentle nature. Ddraig stirred, his voice a low rumble. She's not wrong about the danger, but she's holding back. Devils don't give warnings without a reason. She's protecting her own interest too. I'll decide who I help, Izuku said finally, his voice steady. Not you. Rias nodded, her expression softening but her eyes sharp. I respect that. But know this. The choices you make now will have consequences. You're not just a hero anymore, Izuku. You're the Red Dragon Emperor, and that title carries weight. The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken tension. Izuku's mind raced, torn between his instincts as a hero and the reality of the supernatural world. Asia's smile lingered in his thoughts, as did the church's unsettling stillness. Rias's warning, mixed with the discomfort of her watching him, only strengthened his resolve to forge his own path. I should go, he said, grabbing his backpack. Thanks for talking. I'll think about what you said. Rias walked him to the door, her voice gentle but firm. You're always welcome here, Izuku. But be careful. The world you're stepping into doesn't forgive mistakes. He stepped into the night, the cool air a refreshing contrast to the warmth of the clubroom. The campus was quiet, the moonlight casting long shadows across the lawn. As he made his way to the station, Ddraig's voice broke the silence. She's playing a long game, partner. But so are you. Keep your eyes on that nun. Something's coming, and it's not just devils. Izuku nodded, his determination solidifying. He'd listen, he'd learn, but he wouldn't waver, not to Rias, not to anyone. Asia needed help, and if the church held secrets, he'd face them as a hero, dragon or not.